Chapter 1337. Flames burst forth and a loud rumbling sound rang out. The protective barrier trembled. Tian Chanzi and the others cried out in alarm. They're using a bomb. Such a vicious explosion had occurred in the capital. This group of people were truly brazen and unscrupulous. They came prepared. The authorities definitely won't care. Tian Chanzi hit the nail on the head. The other people's expressions suddenly changed. You're saying that this is a planned operation? Then how do we deal with it? They're just ordinary people. How can they be our opponents? There's nothing to be afraid of. Someone said confidently, not caring at all. Tian Chanzi was the one who made the decision. He said in a deep voice, even so, are we really going to kill these ordinary people who don't even have the strength to truss a chicken? The surroundings immediately quieted down. No one was willing to do that. Those were executioners, demons, not people like them. Tian Chanzi shrugged and said, then it's settled. They definitely won't be able to break through the protective barrier. Our worries are groundless. Yi Dingdang suddenly said. Yes, this was set up by Tang Zheng. It's safe enough. They definitely won't be able to break through. The others agreed and couldn't help but sigh in relief. If they didn't confront these different people directly, then they could avoid bloodshed. The people outside the protective barrier were all fierce and ferocious. Most of them used to be ordinary people. No one would have thought that in the blink of an eye, they would become so crazy and unreasonable. They also saw Tian Chanzi and the others. A stream of obscenities came out of their mouths, making it hard for them to stop. Tian Chanzi and the others frowned when they heard this. However, they forcibly suppressed their anger and didn't rush up to confront them directly. Get out of the way! A shocking roar exploded in everyone's ears like a clap of thunder. The crowd was forcibly separated by a force, and a group of people walked straight in. Yan Qishan and Yan Luyun. Tian Chanzi and the others were shocked. What were they doing here? Before they could ask, insults and insults were thrown at them. Hurry up and leave. What are you doing here? Yan Qishan followed the orders of his father, Yan Patian, and brought his son and a pair of elite soldiers to support him. Yan family was powerful, and when they discovered the situation outside the villa, they immediately reported it to Yan Patian. Yan Patian understood the seriousness of the matter. He guessed that Tang Zheng must have left the capital, and there might not be too much power left in the villa. If this group of angry people were allowed to attack, the consequences would be unimaginable. Because of this, he naturally had to send people to stop all of this. Yan Qishan's reprimand did not have any effect. Instead, he drew the anger onto himself. Looking at this group of people with extraordinary auras, one of them shouted, they must be the accomplices of this group of cultivators. Kill them. As soon as he said this, his anger found an outlet, and he vented it all on the Yan family. The angry crowd rushed toward them like a swarm of bees. Although they were ordinary people, when they were united, they could still unleash a powerful force. Not to mention, there were also people who were fanning the flames and deliberately creating a conspiracy. Yan Qishan did not expect things to turn out like this. He was afraid that Yan Patian did not see the scene, and also made a wrong judgment. He did not expect that the elites he sent out would be at a disadvantage in front of ordinary people. Once there were more people, although the martial strength of these Yan family members was not low, they could not bear to harm ordinary people. This gave the crazy crowd a chance to grab hold of their weakness and attack them with everything they had. Bang! The sound of a gunshot rang out abruptly and ear-piercing, and a Yan family member fell to the ground. They have guns! Yan Qishan exclaimed. Be careful! Yan Qishan was both shocked and angry. Towards ordinary people, he felt pity for them. Originally, he only wanted to disperse them, but someone actually shot him in the back, which touched his bottom line. Yan family members watched as their companions sacrificed themselves, and all of them became furious. Stop them and find the murderer. Yan Qishan roared. Bang! Another gunshot rang out. The bullet shot straight towards Yan Qishan. However, he had a lot of battle experience and was strong, so this bullet did not take his life. He narrowly avoided it, and his gaze immediately locked onto a person in the crowd. He pointed at him and shouted, catch him for me. Whiz! A few Yan family members soared into the air, like a rock spreading its wings, and landed beside that person, trying to grab him. However, the people around them were not to be trifled with. They immediately reacted and stopped them. The two sides immediately clashed. The Yen family was already furious, so they did not show any mercy. A few people were knocked down to the ground, and although their lives were not in danger, their actions completely infuriated the crowd. They were like crazed wild beasts, attacking the Yen family members. The difference in numbers between the two sides was huge, and they were completely entangled. Tian Chanzi and the others saw this and shouted, "The Yen family members are here to help us. We can't turn a blind eye to them getting hurt." Therefore, a group of people immediately rushed out of the protective shield and fought with these people. The area was in a mess. Tang Zheng did not know the situation at home. He had already seen the fifth sun rise, and there were 4 more to the 9th sun. The Yellow Emperor's former subordinates were about to succeed. Sky Mountain finally came into view, and he immediately flew towards the mountain peak. From afar, he saw the battle on the mountainside. On one side were the people he had left behind, and on the other side were the Yellow Emperor's former subordinates. Tang Zheng's people did not wait for their deaths. They directly charged towards the mountain peak and broke through the camouflage of the Yellow Emperor's former subordinates. However, they were intercepted by the Yellow Emperor's former subordinates halfway up the mountain. Both sides suffered heavy casualties, and neither side retreated. The pure white snow on Sky Mountain had begun to melt. After the ice had melted for 10,000 years, it was like a mountain stream flowing down from the mountain peak. The sound of flowing water could be heard continuously. Finally, it gathered into a surging stream, washing away everything it passed. Sky Mountain seemed to have shed its outer layer, revealing its skin, hard rock. The stream did not completely flow to the foot of the mountain. A portion of it turned into steam and rose into the sky. The sky became dark, and dark clouds covered the sky. However, they were still unable to completely block out the dazzling light. Whoosh! The somersault cloud was extremely fast, and it flew to the mountain peak. Looking down, the Yellow Emperor's troops were still covered by the camouflage. Even though they were in mid-air, they could not see their figures. However, Tang Zheng knew that this group of people was hiding on the mountain peak. He had to rush down and completely destroy the camouflage before he could see them. Without any hesitation, he ordered the somersault cloud to dive down like a fighter jet. The air was filled with a sharp piercing sound. The Empyrean Fairy, Li Xiaotian, the Thundercloud Beast, and the Scarlet Lunar Beast were all on full alert. They stared at the mountain peak with burning eyes. Whoosh! A beam of light from a Dharma treasure rose from the mountain peak and attacked the somersault cloud directly. Dodge! Tang Zheng shouted. The somersault cloud nimbly dodged the attack and landed steadily on the mountain peak. Whoosh! 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 One attack after another seemed to appear out of thin air, attacking them from all directions. The Empyrean Fairy frowned and shouted, "Break!" A wave of energy shot out from her body in all directions like a shockwave. In the blink of an eye, the scene around them changed drastically. The camouflage disappeared. The Yellow Emperor's former subordinates were all exposed in front of them. Everyone was casting their techniques. A portion of them attacked them while a portion of them used a secret technique to condense the Golden Crow's soul. Mo Xie and Yi Meiyu were among them. Tang Zheng waved his hand and used the sky-swallowing technique. A huge black hole sucked in the attacks from all directions. Then he shouted, "Mo Xie, stop. Are you trying to destroy this world and destroy humanity?" Mo Xie snorted in disdain. She glanced at him from the corner of her eyes and retorted, "Tang Zheng, you're here to cause trouble again. You're really haunting us." If it wasn't for Tang Zheng stopping them last time, they would have succeeded. They wouldn't have to go through so much trouble this time. "You're doing bad things. Naturally, I won't let you off," Tang Zheng said righteously. "Who said this is bad? This is the master who revived me. He is your ancestor." Mo Xie said righteously. "Ancestor? Humph, if we have to sacrifice the lives of countless people to revive the so-called ancestor, then this ancestor is too cruel. How dare you?" Mo Xie glared at him. "You dare to speak such arrogant words and slander your ancestor." Tang Zheng looked at the Golden Crow's soul that was slowly gathering in the sky from all directions. At this juncture, the 6th Golden Crow's soul had been successfully condensed. The 6 suns hung high in the sky, and the heavenly mountain had already become the hottest place in the world. The rocks gradually turned fiery red, and green smoke rose from them. However, to this group of cultivators, this kind of heat could still be resisted. It was just that everyone's expressions were extremely grim. Tang Zheng ignored Mosie's impassioned words, and directly gave Li Xiaotian a look, and said, "Use the shooting sun arrows, shoot down these golden crow's soul." Li Xiaotian was already eager to give it a try. After hearing Tang Zheng's words, he immediately took out the heaven-shocking bow and the shooting sun arrows, opened the bow and pulled the arrow, and aimed it at the soul of the golden crow. She silently activated Hou Yi's archery method, and the shooting sun arrow immediately turned into a golden arrow. As if sensing the soul of the golden crow, the shooting sun arrow actually started to tremble. This wasn't fear, but excitement. The shooting sun arrows and the heaven-shocking bow were specially made to shoot down the soul of the golden crow. This was a pair of fated enemies. Meeting again, coupled with Li Xiaotian's use of Hou Yi's archery method, triggered a chain reaction. Li Xiaotian seemed to have understood something. This time, it was completely different from before, and another feeling flowed from the bottom of his heart. Hou Yi's archery method's golden arrow, shoot! Li Xiaotian shouted, her fingers loosened, and the shooting sun arrow pierced through the sky. The golden arrow covered the resplendent sunlight in the sky, and shot towards a golden crow's soul. No! Mosie screamed out in fright. Last time, it was the shooting sun arrows and the heaven-shocking bow that shot down the soul of the golden crow, ruining his plans. This time, they came back again. Could it be that they were going to repeat the same mistake? No. He would never allow that. Chapter 1338. Mosie did have a countermeasure. He was not an idiot. Of course, he would not make the same mistake twice. He had already expected that someone would stop him. He could deceive them for a while, but he could not continue to deceive them. Without a doubt, the heaven-shocking bow and the sun-shooting arrow were the greatest threats to the golden crow's soul. He had spent a lot of time and brain cells on how to avoid the attack of this divine weapon. The heavens did not disappoint those who were willing. He finally thought of a way. That was to form a telepathic connection with the golden crow's soul. This way, he could control the golden crow's soul to dodge the sun-shooting arrow and not be treated as a live target. Whiz! The shining sun-shooting arrow arrived in front of the golden crow's soul. In the next second, it seemed as if it was going to shatter the golden crow's soul into pieces and turn into strands of light. The corner of Mosie's mouth curled up into a mocking sneer. With a thought, he said to himself, "Dodge!" The soul of the golden crow quickly moved to the left, causing the sun-shooting arrow to miss. "Ha!" Tang Zheng exclaimed. Last time, he had shot down the soul of the golden crow one by one. At that time, the soul of the golden crow was not so cunning as to be able to dodge the sun-shooting arrow in time. He suddenly stared at Mosie, and seeing his unfathomable smile, he came to a realization and shouted, "Crap, the soul of the golden crow has changed, it's not that easy to attack anymore. Strange, it can actually dodge the attack of the sun-shooting arrow." Empyrean Fairy was also amazed. "Ha ha ha, now you know what it means to be unstoppable, right? Your insignificant skills are useless now. It's impossible to threaten the soul of the golden crow. My master will finally be reborn today." Mosie laughed maniacally and shouted loudly. The expressions of Tang Zheng and the others became gloomy. Li Xiaotian did not believe it and clenched her teeth. Her confidence in the heaven-shocking bow and the sun-shooting arrow was extraordinary, surpassing everyone else's, so she was not knocked down by a single mistake. She let out a shout, and the shooting sun arrow flashed with a golden light. Then, it made a turn in the air and shot toward another golden crow soul. Whoosh! The shooting sun arrow almost brushed past the soul of the golden crow, but it still missed. Ha ha ha! Mosie's laughter was even more complacent and ear-piercing, as if she was mocking them for overestimating themselves. Amidst the laughter, the seventh sun successfully condensed in the sky. It flickered with blazing light, as if adding oil to the fire on the earth. Tang Zheng's body, which was impervious to both heat and cold, also felt a sense of discomfort. A normal person would have difficulty surviving and would be struggling on the line between life and death. He suddenly had an idea and shouted, "Thundercloud beast, move!" Whoosh! The thundercloud beast soared into the sky and transformed back into its original form. Its huge wings were like a dark cloud, covering the sky and blocking the sunlight. If it was an ordinary bird, its feathers would have long been set ablaze. However, the thundercloud beast was no ordinary bird. It flapped its wings fiercely, creating a gale that blew away a large portion of the heat wave. Even the fragments of light from the golden crow's soul were blown away. The eighth sun was about to condense successfully, but it immediately stopped due to this delay, not to mention the ninth sun. Wuxia was furious and said, "Thundercloud beast, you bastard, how dare you ruin my plans? Watch my Ganjiang sword." Whoosh! The Ganjiang sword flew up and pierced towards the thundercloud beast. Whoosh whoosh! The thundercloud beast flapped its wings and a gale blew against the Ganjiang sword. However, the Ganjiang sword's trajectory did not deviate at all. Just like before, it fiercely shot towards the thundercloud beast. A bolt of lightning flashed through the thundercloud beast's eyes. Its entire body flickered with crackling lightning. Pa! The lightning landed on the Ganjiang sword. The Ganjiang sword finally tilted, but its attack did not decrease and still shot towards the thundercloud beast. Its huge body was like a living target. No matter how the Ganjiang sword tilted, it could still accurately hit it. The Ganjiang sword was about to hit the thundercloud beast. A trace of panic flashed through the thundercloud beast's eyes. With a flash of lightning, it quickly shrunk. In the blink of an eye, it turned back to the size of a puppy, narrowly dodging this attack. The Ganjiang sword almost brushed past its body. One could even feel the shock brought by the sharp sword chi. "Thundercloud beast, let's see if you still dare to stir up trouble." Wuxia laughed. He did not put the thundercloud beast in his eyes at all. The light spots of the golden crow's soul that had been blown away earlier quickly gathered again. The eighth sun seemed to be about to condense successfully. "I definitely can't let him succeed." Tang Zheng secretly clenched his teeth. This extreme heat seemed to be able to evaporate all the water in one's body. He did not know what it was like in other places. "Cloud summoning rain." Tang Zheng secretly shouted and used the dragon god technique. A mysterious power spread out in all directions. The dragon slayer was in a certain corner of this world. Using the dragon god technique at this time was definitely not a good idea. However, the consequences of this extreme heat were unimaginable. If it was allowed to continue developing, this world would really be destroyed. Thus, he abandoned his personal safety and used the cloud summoning rain. The dragon race's divine ability was indeed extraordinary. There were originally black clouds in the sky, which was the water evaporated from the ground. When he used the cloud summoning rain, the clouds immediately became thicker under the effect of the mysterious power. Kacha! A bolt of lightning fell from the clouds, as if it wanted to tear the sky apart. The light of the lightning and the sun reflected each other, and was especially dazzling. Whoosh! Torrential rain fell from the clouds, sprinkling onto the ground and onto everyone. Some of the people with weaker cultivations were immediately drenched. However, for the experts, the rain could not touch their bodies at all. An invisible power blocked the rain. The torrential rain immediately swept away the extreme heat, causing a refreshing feeling to attack one's heart, adding a sense of coolness. The clouds were still rapidly spreading in all directions. Everywhere it passed, the torrential rain swept away a portion of the extreme heat, and immediately suppressed the flames on the ground. It was not enough to cause a huge fire to spread across such a large area. When the Empyrean fairy saw this, she also understood Tang Zheng's good intentions. Without a doubt, the cloud summoning rain could not stop the soul of the golden crow from condensing. It could only prevent the world from being destroyed immediately, reduce the extreme heat, and make people feel better, so that they would not be dried up under the sun. "Don't worry about the cloud summoning rain. I will stop Wuxia," the Empyrean fairy said without hesitation. Her figure flashed, and she directly rushed towards Wuxia. The clouds spread very quickly. Not long after, with the heavenly mountain as the center, the dark clouds covered a radius of tens of kilometers, hundreds of kilometers, and finally thousands of kilometers, bringing rain to these areas. The people cheered as they looked at the dark clouds. They were on the verge of tears. Many people knelt on the ground, kowtowing to the sky, muttering, "God, you have finally shown mercy, this rain is good." The sun was on one side, and the rain was on the other side. The rain and sunlight mixed together, and this was a sun rain. However, this rain did not fundamentally change the situation. It only alleviated the situation. When the rain fell on the ground, it was quickly evaporated by the sunlight, and returned to the clouds. Even a part of the rain was evaporated before it fell to the ground. The clouds in the sky thickened again, and the water content was even higher. It was precisely because of this that Tang Zhang could rely on his own strength to summon the cloud-summoning rain over such a vast land. Otherwise, with his strength, he would not be able to cover such a large area. Tang Zhang was very clear about this point. The so-called advantages and disadvantages. The soul of the golden crow evaporated the water on the ground, and he used this as a precondition to add a suitable fire, and let the ground be covered by the rain and the sun at the same time. This at least slowed down the pace of the world's destruction. Rain, evaporation, and rain again. This was like a cycle that repeated over and over. Tang Zheng, what you are doing is futile. You can't completely change the situation. Wuxia shouted. Tang Zheng did not say a word, and only silently urged the dragon god technique to summon the cloud-summoning rain. As long as he could save some people, then his efforts would be rewarded, and that would be enough. Wuxia, you are still a so-called ancient powerhouse, but compared to Tang Zheng, your awareness is more than 100,000 miles away. He is saving the masses of humanity, but you want to kill so many people for your own personal gain. You are really too vicious and merciless. The Empyrean fairy sternly accused. Wuxia turned a deaf ear and said, "What is personal gain? What is great merit? Can a junior like you say it clearly? You still dare to boast and lecture me so shamelessly. Humph! The ignorant are fearless. You are already at the end of your rope. There is no other way. You should just give up this so-called struggle." Give up? Humph! I, the Empyrean fairy, do not have such a word in my dictionary. The Empyrean fairy soared into the air and summoned the mountain river map. The Ganjiang sword flashed, and fiercely attacked the mountain river map. The Empyrean fairy was not afraid, and hurriedly urged the mountain river map to fight with Wuxia's Ganjiang sword. Back and forth, the light of treasures was extraordinary, and the momentum was great. Wuxia was distracted, and the speed at which the golden crow's soul condensed slowed down. The other old subordinates of the Yellow Emperor were incomparably anxious, but there was nothing they could do. However, there were smart people who immediately attacked Tang Zheng in groups of 3 to 5, and it was also a good thing to get rid of this big problem in their hearts first. Tang Zheng was fully focused on summoning the cloud-summoning rain, and had no time to protect himself. However, the Thundercloud Beast and Scarlet Lunar Beast stood in front of him to protect him, and did not allow the enemy to come even half a step closer. A tug-of-war began. The Thundercloud Beast's lightning attack was very frightening. When the lightning struck the enemy would emit black smoke and fall to the ground. The Scarlet Lunar Beast's tail was very powerful, and when it swept across and hit the enemy would be swept away. The old subordinates of the Yellow Emperor were not ordinary people, and the few people from before were too rash. After losing these few people, the others became cautious. Yi Meiyu stood at the back of the group. She did not rush forward rashly, as that was not her style. She was not a brute who only knew how to charge forward. She quietly moved and did not get close to Tang Zheng. Tang Zheng had once broken her traceless dream, so she was rather afraid. She had her eyes on the Empyrean fairy. Chapter 1339. While the Empyrean fairy and Wuxia were in the midst of a fierce battle, Yi Meiyu secretly came to a place not far away. She opened her hands and quietly cast the traceless dream. When she cast the spell, Wuxia immediately sensed it. After all, he and Yi Meiyu had already cooperated with each other once. This tacit understanding made him immediately excited, but he remained calm and continued to activate the Ganjiang sword, fiercely attacking the Empyrean fairy. In the eyes of the Empyrean fairy, the Ganjiang sword was ferocious, so she immediately counterattacked. The stately painting swept up a gust of wind, revealing a huge rock that smashed towards the Ganjiang sword. Clang! With a loud bang, the Ganjiang sword was smashed right on the spot. The Ganjiang sword rapidly fell and stabbed into the rock. The Empyrean fairy's eyes flashed with a hint of complacency. She happened to see Tang Zheng being surrounded by the enemy and was in extreme danger. She shouted, "Be careful," and flew in front of Tang Zheng, protecting him and attacking the enemy. She did not notice the change in the eyes of the Tang Zheng behind her, and a strange smile appeared on the corner of his mouth. Tang Zheng raised his hand, and a cold light flashed in his hand, stabbing towards the Empyrean fairy's back. When Wuxia saw this, he was overjoyed. He and the Empyrean fairy had the same cultivation. Both were at the first stage of the Mahayana realm. It could be said that they were on par, and it would not be easy to defeat the other party in a short period of time. Yi Meiyu's little trick happened to make up for this, and could help him end the battle quickly. Seeing the cold light silently stabbing towards the Empyrean fairy, Wuxia seemed to have seen the dawn of victory. Taking advantage of this gap, he quickly cast a spell to condense the soul of the golden crow. Countless specks of light gathered towards the soul of the 8th golden crow and gradually took shape. The Empyrean fairy did not notice the change behind her at all. The god of death had already descended on her head, but she did not know. Normally, she would definitely have noticed. However, this was the dreamscape created by the Traceless Dream's sacred art. Her focus and reaction speed were greatly reduced. Fu Yao, be careful of Yi Meiyu's heart's dream, wake up quickly. A weak voice sounded in Empyrean fairy's ears. The voice was very weak, as if it came from a faraway place. She almost missed it. However, it was as if he had been enlightened. The Empyrean fairy quivered as if she had just woken up from a dream. She tapped the ground with the tip of her foot and charged forward. Yi Meiyu's attack missed. The cold light stopped at the position where the Empyrean fairy was standing. If she had not rushed forward for a distance, the cold light would have pierced through her back. The Empyrean fairy turned her head and happened to see this scene. Her consciousness immediately became clearer, and she kept telling herself that this was all a dream. Traceless Dream had lost its effect. The appearance of Tang Zhang underwent a tremendous change and turned into Yi Meiyu's appearance. The killing intent in the Empyrean fairy's eyes surged as she said, "You still want to use this method to kill me?" Whiz! A ray of cold light flew out from the mountain river map and shot straight towards Yi Meiyu. Yi Meiyu panicked and immediately ran backwards in an attempt to avoid this attack. She was very clear about the difference between her and Yi Meiyu. Furthermore, as long as Traceless Dream lost its effect, her so-called attack would not be of much use. She wanted to dodge, but it was useless. Puff! The cold light pierced through her chest, bringing with it a flower of blood. She fell backwards with a loud bang, her eyes flashing with despair. "Be careful!" Wuxia flew behind her and caught her, preventing her from falling into the bottomless abyss below the heavenly mountain. Wuxia anxiously tapped on her body a few times. This time, the damage was very severe, passing through her right chest and almost injuring her heart. At the last moment, she dodged in time to avoid the vital point of her heart. "Don't worry, I'll save you." Wuxia comforted her, circulating her energy to stabilize her injuries. Yi Meiyu's face was pale and her breathing was heavy. In that moment, she felt the threat of death and her heart seemed to have stopped beating. At this moment, she was finally still alive. She was extremely lucky and understood the beauty of being alive. Wuxia put her down and looked up at the sky. The 8th soul of the golden crow had been condensed. The 8 suns shone in the sky. Although there was a sun rain, it was still extremely hot, almost melting people. When Tang Zhang saw this scene, his heart turned cold. He had worked so hard, but the enemy was still approaching success step by step. Was there really no way to stop it? Empyrean Fairy's heart also darkened. She nodded towards Tang Zhang and said, "Thank you." Just now, if not for Tang Zhang noticing the clues in time and reminding her, she would have been killed by Yi Meiyu. Tang Zhang bit his lips and said, "The situation is getting more and more dangerous. We have to help Li Xiaotian and successfully shoot down the soul of the golden crow." Empyrean Fairy also understood this point and nodded heavily. The soul of the golden crow was the key. They were fighting to the death with the Yellow Emperor's old subordinates, and the soul of the golden crow was still condensing. 4 symbols venerable. Tang Zhang called out, and the 4 symbols venerable appeared on the mountain peak with a boom. In this great battle, he was unable to summon the Azura, because the scorching sun above his head was the absolute nemesis of the Azura. The yang qi brought by the few suns was far more powerful than the heavenly furnace array formation. Therefore, if the Azura appeared here, it would be courting death. It would definitely cause irreversible damage. Seeing the appearance of the 4 symbols venerable, Wuxia was not afraid. Instead, he said jokingly, "Tang Zheng, you want to destroy my plan with just this big guy? Wishful thinking. Today, the 9 souls of the golden crow will definitely be condensed successfully, and Master will definitely be revived." Wuxia was resolute and decisive. Tang Zheng's face was ashen as he shouted, "Dream on! Kill!" This time, Tang Zhang directly abandoned the Yellow Emperor's old subordinates and rushed towards the soul of the golden crow, activating the sky-devouring technique. Since the sky-devouring technique could even absorb the savage aura, Could it absorb the soul of the golden crow? It was impossible for the soul of the golden crow to completely disappear. Even if they successfully stopped Wuxia this time and used the shooting sun arrows to shatter the soul of the golden crow, it would still be scattered in every corner of the world. Once the Yellow Emperor's old subordinates found a way to condense it, it would be another catastrophe, and the cycle would repeat. Wuxia was not annoyed, but Tang Zheng would be too. Therefore, he wanted to solve this problem once and for all. The only way he could think of now was to use the sky-devouring technique to absorb the soul of the golden crow. However, looking at the soul of the golden crow hanging high above his head, he was also anxious. Regardless of whether he succeeded or not, he would try again. Therefore, he activated the sky-devouring technique and rushed towards the soul of the golden crow. The two black holes in his palms merged into one, turning into a huge black hole. Whoosh whoosh. The air in front of him was completely sucked in, and the surging heat wave could not escape the attraction of the black hole. Seeing that he was about to get close, suddenly, a blazing power poured into his body from the top of his head. Chapter 1340. Discovering the situation of the pure yang energy, Tang Zheng was shocked and cried out, "Oh no!" He suddenly realized that these suns shining in the sky would not only affect the Shura but also cause irreversible damage to him. At the same time, this was also fatal to him, especially when he was near the golden crow's soul. The yang energy emitted by the golden crow's soul was so strong that it would ignite the pure yang energy in his body. The pure yang energy was a fatal danger to him. He originally wanted to use the sky-swallowing technique to absorb the golden crow's soul, but now it was difficult to even get close to the golden crow's soul, let alone absorb it into the black hole. His expression suddenly sank, and his body also fell down. When the others saw this, they all cried out in alarm. They thought that Tang Zheng's attack would definitely explode with great power, but they never thought that it would be stopped halfway before it could be fully displayed. Ha ha ha, Tang Zheng, you overestimate yourself. You actually want to get close to the golden crow's soul. Others might be able to, but you definitely can't. Wuxia saw this and laughed wildly. This was a pleasant surprise that exceeded Wuxia's expectations. However, he immediately understood the reason behind it. Tang Zheng had the 9 yang saint body and contained a lot of pure yang energy. Normally, this pure yang energy was balanced by the pure yin energy and reached a state of balance. Once Tang Zheng got close to the golden crow's soul, this balance would be completely broken and Tang Zheng would not be able to control the pure yang energy. The taste of pure yang energy is very wonderful, right? Don't worry, I will let you slowly taste it and witness the arrival of my master. When the others heard this, they immediately understood the reason and the great danger that Tang Zheng was facing. The mysterious maiden of the 9 heavens immediately remembered the time when they were in the life totem. In order to save Tang Zheng, she had no choice but to offer her first kiss. Mouth to mouth, she fed her pure yin energy to Tang Zheng. That scene caused many ripples in her heart. In the dead of the night, when she recalled this scene, her heart would inexplicably throb. She gritted her teeth and threw away these messy thoughts. She did not rush to catch Tang Zheng. She was afraid that Tang Zheng would lose control and ask her for a kiss again. As the Empyrean fairy, she could not bring herself to do this in front of so many people. However, the other person did not have such concerns. When Li Xiaotian saw Tang Zheng falling from the sky, he subconsciously soared into the air and caught him. Ah! She couldn't help but cry out in surprise because Tang Zheng's body was too hot, like a furnace, making her subconsciously want to let go. But in the end, reason prevailed over her nature. She gritted her teeth and held on tightly to Tang Zheng. Tang Zheng was unbearably hot. Although he still had reason, when Li Xiaotian hugged him, that cool purine energy entered through every pore of his body. It was as if he had suddenly fallen into a cold lake, refreshing his heart. He felt as if he had found a treasure and hugged her tightly. Li Xiaotian's heart tightened. She had been thinking about Tang Zheng for a long time, and this strong hug had stirred her thoughts. She was very clear about the danger of Tang Zheng's pure yang energy eruption. Now that his pure yang energy had erupted again, it was life-threatening. She also knew how to restrain pure yang energy. After hesitating for a moment, she did not hesitate to send her seductive lips to Tang Zheng's mouth. When their lips touched, an endless stream of pure yin energy was transmitted over, causing Tang Zheng to be startled. He did not expect Li Xiaotian to be so proactive, to the point of making such a huge sacrifice to save him. The two of them were very close to each other. Their eyes met and they communicated silently. Tang Zhang could see the determination in her eyes. He did not reject her good intentions. She was willing to make such a huge sacrifice to save him. If he rejected her good intentions, he would have let her down. However, this scene shocked everyone, especially Empyrean Fairy, who felt a little strange in her heart. If she did not hesitate, then perhaps the person who kissed Tang Zhang would be her. Thinking of this, her entire body trembled. She took a deep breath and quickly restrained these messy thoughts. Yi Meiyu was heavily injured and her aura was weak. When she saw this scene, she was furious. This damned Tang Zhang had rejected her embrace back then, yet he was still unclear with so many women. This was a great insult to her. It was equivalent to her being defeated by other women. Wuxia opened his eyes wide. He obviously understood what this meant, and that was that Tang Zhang would not really be detonated by the pure yang energy. Separate the two of them. Wuxia shouted. So. A few former subordinates of the Yellow Emperor soared into the sky, activating their magic treasure S to attack the two of them in the air. The two of them had no time to care, and could only watch as the magic treasure approached. Bang bang bang. Suddenly, a huge figure descended. The four symbols venerable protected the two of them, and the magic treasure S of the others were unable to get close to them. The two of them landed on the ground, but they were still hugging each other tightly. Their lips were even tighter, as if they wanted to fuse into each other's bodies. The restlessness in Tang Zheng's eyes gradually calmed down, and his eyes lit up with a trace of gratitude. Yes, he was very grateful to Li Xiaotian for stepping forward. If not for her, he would not have been able to control the restless pure yang energy. The consequences would have been unimaginable. Li Xiaotian seemed to be drunk, her cheeks flushed red. She had already cultivated the art of charm, and now she was even more charming and alluring. If it was someone else with a weak will, they would have been unable to control themselves after seeing this scene. However, Tang Zhang was not an ordinary person, and his will was unimaginably firm. Therefore, even though the beauty was good, he still let go of her. Their lips parted, and a trace of reluctance lingered in Li Xiaotian's heart. "Thank you," Tang Zhang sincerely said. Li Xiaotian's lips curled into a smile, and she pretended to be free and easy as she said, "It was nothing." No one noticed the bitterness in that smile. Tang Zhang restrained the pure yang energy and regained his vitality. He stared at the ninth golden crow's soul that was gathering in the sky. His face darkened, and said to Li Xiaotian in an inaudible voice, "We must shoot down the soul of the golden crow, or else this world will be finished." Li Xiaotian's heart tightened, and she also abandoned her feelings. She knew that Tang Zheng's words were reasonable, and said, "Why don't I give you the heaven-shocking bow and the shooting sun arrows? Last time, you shot down the soul of the golden crow, so you can definitely do it this time." Tang Zhang shook his head slightly, rejecting her suggestion. "No, they can be of greater use in your hands. The situation this time is completely different from last time. Wuxia can control the soul of the golden crow to dodge. Even I can't shoot them down." Li Xiaotian's face froze and asked worriedly, "Then what should we do?" Tang Zhang was silent. Because of the agitation of the pure yang energy, Tang Zhang had no choice but to stop the clouds and rain. Without rain to reduce the heat, the world seemed to have turned into a furnace, with countless flames jumping up from the ground. The scorching air was sucked into people's lungs. Immediately, their lungs felt as if they were on fire, burning their bodies. Countless people despaired, thinking that they had reached the end of their lives. In fact, even humans had reached the end. Tang Zhang looked at the sky, as if he was silently asking, had humans really reached the end? No. He gave a firm answer in his heart. "Let's aim at the same target. I'll lure it out, and then you find a chance to shoot it down." Tang Zhang used himself as bait, risking his life. Li Xiaotian immediately denied it. "No, the soul of the golden crow will detonate your pure yang energy again, it's too dangerous. There's no time. This is the only way. If sacrificing myself can shoot down this damned golden crow soul, then I'll accept it." Tang Zhang clenched his teeth and said hatefully. Li Xiaotian stared at him with burning eyes and said, "Is it worth it?" "Yes." Tang Zheng nodded without hesitation, "Because in this world, there are too many people that I care about." "Am I one of them?" Li Xiaotian hesitated for a moment, but finally asked. Tang Zheng rubbed her hair, smiled slightly, and said with an unquestionable tone, "Of course." After saying this, he rose into the air and flew towards the soul of the golden crow. Li Xiaotian's heart was filled with complex emotions, and silently said, "Thank you," then suppressed all of his emotions, drew his bow, and aimed at the soul of the golden crow. Suddenly, that familiar mysterious feeling attacked her heart again. At first, when she drew the bow and pulled the arrow towards the soul of the golden crow, this feeling appeared in her heart. It was as if the heaven-shocking bow and sun-shooting arrow were different when facing the soul of the golden crow. When he aimed at the soul of the golden crow, this feeling became even stronger. Suddenly, her heart moved, and she suddenly understood. "I understand, these two divine weapons and the soul of the golden crow are old enemies. There is a kind of fate between them. When I aimed at the soul of the golden crow, the divine weapons also sensed it." She hurriedly activated Ho Yi's archery, and the sun-shooting arrow gradually turned golden. The golden light became more and more dazzling. However, this dazzling golden light did not last for long. The light suddenly dimmed, and turned into another color. She was shocked, and stared straight at the sun-shooting arrow. It had turned green, like a new sprout on a tree branch, shining with infinite vitality and vitality. Wooden arrow. Li Xiaotian immediately recognized it as if he had found a treasure. This was another change in Ho Yi's archery. Obviously, this was an additional effect caused by the connection with the soul of the golden crow. Li Xiaotian was wild with joy. He stared at the green wooden arrow, with a thought. The wooden arrow turned into a golden arrow, and then back into a wooden arrow. She could change all of this as she pleased. Everyone's attention was attracted by Tang Zheng and the soul of the golden crow, and no one noticed the change in the sun-shooting arrow. Tang Zheng charged towards the soul of the golden crow without caring about his own safety, and used the sky-swallowing technique again. In the eyes of Wuxia and the mocking eyes of the Yellow Emperor's former subordinates, he was like a fool who was seeking death. They had already determined that Tang Zheng would definitely not be able to escape a second time, because they had already made the corresponding adjustments. Under Wuxia's orders, the Yellow Emperor's former subordinates all occupied the area directly below Tang Zheng. Once he fell from the sky again, what greeted him would be the fatal attacks of countless treasures. Chapter 1341. Of course, Tang Zheng noticed the changes below, but he couldn't care less about it. He could only try his best to go up. However, with his previous experience, he didn't rush forward blindly. Instead, he moved left and right as if he was teasing the golden crow's soul. When Wuxia saw his actions, she naturally couldn't allow him to continue showing off like this. After all, there were still a large number of people waiting below, waiting to hack him to death. Wuxia's mind moved, and the golden crow's soul chased after Tang Zheng. With 8 golden crow souls, Tang Zheng couldn't split himself and couldn't dodge them all. Mighty yang qi fell from the top of his head. If it weren't for his profound skills and ample preparation, his pure yang energy would have been detonated by this yang qi. Tang Zheng was already forced into a corner by the 8 golden crow souls. He watched as they closed in, and his pure yang energy seemed like it could explode at any time. Without a doubt, Tang Zheng and the golden crow's soul attracted the attention of all the Yellow Emperor's former subordinates. These people were complacent, thinking that they were determined to win and that Tang Zheng was definitely going to die. Suddenly, Tang Zheng glanced at Li Xiaotian and gave her a look. Li Xiaotian had been watching him. When she saw this look, she understood that this was a once-in-a-lifetime opportunity. Thus, she gently loosened her fingers. Whoosh! The green shooting sun arrow turned into a green light and flew towards the golden crow's soul. Wuxia was an expert after all. Although most of his attention was focused on Tang Zheng, he still noticed the shooting sun arrow at the critical moment. He knew that something was wrong, and his expression suddenly changed. His reaction was very fast. With a thought, the golden crow's soul scattered in all directions, trying to avoid the shooting sun arrow. He succeeded. This green shooting sun arrow missed and didn't hit the golden crow's soul at all. Wuxia sighed in relief and was about to mock him when suddenly, another green light appeared in front of a golden crow's soul. What's going on? Wuxia turned pale with fright, but it was already too late to dodge. However, he finally saw clearly what was going on. It turned out that a golden arrow and a wooden arrow were shot out at the same time. However, under the bright sunlight, The wooden arrow was particularly eye-catching and attracted everyone's attention. On the contrary, the traces of the golden arrow were completely covered. Li Xiaotian had fully demonstrated this point. Just as the golden arrow was about to hit one of the golden crow souls, it finally changed color and turned into an even more powerful wooden arrow. Boom! With a deafening explosion, the soul of the golden crow was struck by the wooden arrow and exploded. It turned into specks of light that scattered in all directions. No! Wuxia turned pale with fright as she screamed. Her face was ghastly pale to the extreme, and it was even mixed with indescribable rage. He never thought that a weak person like Li Xiaotian would be able to shoot the golden crow's soul right under his nose. This was a great humiliation. Immediately, he also understood that Tang Zheng's attack on the golden crow's soul was purposely to attract his attention and give Li Xiaotian an opportunity to attack. Damn it, I was actually played by them. Wuxia gritted her teeth, and her eyes looked as if they were about to spit out fire. Yeah. Li Xiaotian waved her fist, unable to hide her excitement. She had finally succeeded in shooting down a golden crow's soul. To her, this was a great encouragement. Tang Zheng also couldn't hide his joy and gave Li Xiaotian an encouraging look. Their eyes met, and Li Xiaotian's heart warmed as a great sense of accomplishment overwhelmed his heart. There were only 7 golden crow souls left in the sky. You think you can ruin my plan just like this? Wishful thinking. Wuxia was furious. Just as she finished speaking, the 9th golden crow's soul that was originally condensing gathered together and turned into a sun. Another 8 golden crow's souls hung in the air. When Tang Zheng and the others saw this, their hearts suddenly sank. They had worked hard for half a day, but they didn't think that they would actually succeed. Moreover, at a speed visible to the naked eye, the golden crow's souls that had just exploded slowly rose into the air and gathered together again. I definitely can't let you succeed, Tang Zheng shouted, and rushed toward the golden crow souls that were slowly condensing. He couldn't deal with a complete golden crow soul, but he should have a way to deal with these stragglers. This thought flashed through his mind like a bolt of lightning, and he seemed to wake up from a dream. Why was he so stupid that he didn't think of this method? He hurriedly used the sky-swallowing technique, and the huge black hole produced a terrifying suction force. The complete golden crow's soul resisted this suction force, and the scattered light spots were not that powerful and were all sucked in. Whoosh whoosh. The air mixed with the light spots were sucked into the black hole. Everyone saw this scene. Silence reigned. He actually sucked the golden crow's soul into the black hole. The Yellow Emperor's old subordinates all looked as if they had seen a ghost, and their eyes were wide open in disbelief. Even Wuxia was so shocked that he couldn't speak. How is this possible? How can he suck the golden crow's soul away? How can I gather the 9th golden crow's soul like this? Wuxia muttered to himself as if he had lost his soul. It was no wonder that he had such a big reaction. This scene was just too shocking, and the consequences were too great. Wuxia wholeheartedly wanted to gather the 9th golden crow soul and revive the Yellow Emperor. But now that there was 1 golden crow soul missing, how could he do it? There was nothing he could do. Despair spread from the bottom of his heart, and anger accompanied it. It was not an exaggeration to say that his mood was overflowing with anger. He stared at Tang Zheng, who was still absorbing the golden crow soul, and let out a hysterical roar. Tang Zheng, I'm going to kill you. After saying this, he charged towards Tang Zheng with a powerful force. After Tang Zheng discovered the huge effect of the sky-swallowing technique, he immediately activated his skill and continuously absorbed the scattered golden crow soul. Not long after, the scattered golden crow soul was completely sucked into the black hole. Immediately, he was overjoyed. As long as there was no 9th golden crow soul, this world would be able to avoid destruction. His heart, which had been hanging in the air, finally settled down. Looking at Wuxia, who was crazily charging towards him, Tang Zheng could not retreat in time. This was because the other 8 golden crow souls had completely blocked his path of retreat. Kill! His eyes became resolute as he charged towards Wuxia without a care for his own safety. The Empyrean fairy also caught up. She was very clear about the difference between Tang Zheng and Wuxia. Tang Zheng was definitely not Wuxia's opponent. The stately painting shone brightly as it released its strongest attack. The Empyrean fairy also gave it her all. In order to save Tang Zheng, she gave it her all. Li Xiaotian did not help Tang Zheng because she knew that if she rushed up, she would not be able to help at all. She had more important things to do. Compared to other girls, Li Xiaotian's most obvious trait was her rationality. Although she did not recover her memories, she was gradually regaining her rationality. It was precisely because of her rationality that she understood her responsibilities and advantages. She had to shoot down as many golden crow souls as possible. This was the only thing that could alleviate the current situation. Therefore, she did not hesitate to draw her bow and arrow and aimed at another golden crow's soul. Moc's mind was covered by anger and had no time to care about the golden crow's soul. Therefore, when this sun-shooting arrow, which had concealed its tracks, flew in front of the golden crow's soul, the golden crow's soul was indifferent. Boom! There was another explosion. This time, the golden crow's soul exploded again. There were only 7 suns left in the sky. The explosion made the hearts of the Yellow Emperor's former subordinates tremble. Seeing the golden crow's soul scatter into spots of light, they were all grief-stricken. This time, there was no hope of reviving the Yellow Emperor. What should they do? No one knew the answer. Wuxia also did not know the answer. The anger in his heart burned even more fiercely, as if it could burn everything. He ignored the stately painting's attack behind him and only had eyes for Tang Zheng. He was determined to kill him. Tang Zheng knew that he was not Wuxia's opponent, so he simply used the sky-swallowing technique to absorb the scattered spots of light after the explosion. Just as he finished absorbing the exploding golden crow's soul, Wuxia's attack arrived in front of him. In the face of such a violent attack, he could not block it at all. His indestructible body only blocked the Ganjiang sword slightly. Then, the Ganjiang sword pierced through his chest like a hot knife through butter. The Ganjiang sword cut through his muscles and pierced through his heart, directly piercing through Qi Yu's heart. Tang Zheng trembled violently and subconsciously put down his hands that were controlling the black hole. However, the black hole did not disappear. Instead, it floated in mid-air. He could clearly feel the situation in his body. After Qi Yu's heart was pierced, the last remaining bit of Qi Yu's blood flowed out and flowed into his 8 extraordinary meridians. However, this did not stop the terrible injuries. He felt his life force slowly leaving his body. A bitter smile appeared on his face. The chaotic Vajra spell had helped him cultivate to the indestructible body, but what was the use? The difference in cultivation between him and Wuxia was like heaven and earth, so even the chaotic Vajra spell was unable to make up for the difference. Moreover, Wuxia had used all of his killing moves this time and had completely locked onto him. He had no way of dodging at all. Looking at the furious Wuxia who was right in front of him, Tang Zheng moved his lips and blood flowed out from the corner of his mouth. He said weakly, "Wuxia, you have failed. If you are unable to condense 9 golden crow souls, you will not be able to revive your master. This world will also avoid destruction." "Do you know what you are doing?" Wuxia asked hysterically. "Of course I know. I am saving the world, saving the people I care about, my friends, my family, my lover." Tang Zheng's voice became weaker and weaker. He felt as if his body was no longer his own. He had never felt this way before. Was this the feeling of death? I didn't die from the explosion of pure yang energy, but in the end, I died under Wuxia's Ganjiang sword. Tang Zheng thought bitterly. He tried his best to open his eyes wide, as if he wanted to see the world again. He wanted to see the people he cared about again. He saw the Empyrean fairy attacking with all her might, saw Li Xiaotian pulling the bowstring again, saw the 4 symbols venerable, the thundercloud beast, and the scarlet moon beast fighting with the Yellow Emperor's former subordinates. Chapter 1342. This sword had pierced through Tang Zheng's body and heart, quickly taking his life away. The wind seemed to have stopped, and so did the sounds of battle. The entire world had become silent. His gaze was resolute. He did not regret any of this. If he was given another chance, he would still do the same thing without hesitation, even if it meant sacrificing himself. The Empyrean maiden saw this scene, Li Xiaotian saw this scene, and all the other people and beasts saw this scene. They were all shocked. In the eyes of Empyrean fairy and the others, Tang Zheng was always able to turn danger into safety, as if he would never die. It turned out that it was all just their misconception. Everyone could die. Tang Zheng was no exception. Seeing his life force rapidly draining away, everyone was furious. The Empyrean fairy stopped activating the painting of mountains and rivers of the gods of earth and Vale. Li Xiaotian put down his bow and arrow. The four symbols Venerable, the red lunar beast, and the thundercloud beast rushed toward him at the same time as if they had gone mad. They completely ignored the enemies in front of them. Tang Zheng! Waves of heart-wrenching cries rang out, even more shocking than the claps of thunder from the 9 heavens. Empyrean Fairy and Li Xiaotian flew to Tang Zheng's side at the same time. Mo Xie did not stop them, and he had already pulled out his Ganjiang sword. Blood spurted out from the wound, and then like a small stream, the blood flowed out of the wound. Empyrean Fairy was the first to hug her, saying anxiously, "You won't die, you must hold on." Li Xiaotian stood guard at the side, nodding his head like he was pounding garlic. "Yes, you've created so many miracles and experienced so many dangers, yet you're still safe and sound. You definitely won't die." Her voice was already choked with sobs. Obviously, her emotions were fluctuating greatly. "Ha ha ha, he's dead for sure. He's not that lucky to survive my sword strike." Mo Xie saw this scene and said happily. The Empyrean Fairy and Li Xiaotian both turned their heads and glared fiercely at Mo Xie. They wanted nothing more than to stab him with their swords. Mo Xie was not afraid at all. Instead, she raised her head. Her provocation was self-evident. Tang Zheng smoothly held their hands. Their delicate jade hands were more delicate than the most precious porcelain in the world, causing one's heart to sway. His heart did not waver. Instead, he forced himself to open his eyes and smiled weakly. "I'm afraid I won't die so easily." "Won't die so easily?" Everyone else was stunned and looked at him in disbelief. Even Mo Xie looked as if she had seen a ghost and shouted, "Impossible!" What was his Ganjiang sword? That was a saint artifact with an artifact spirit. That sword had completely pierced through Tang Zheng's heart. If he still hadn't died, then his life force was too tenacious. Tang Zheng was indeed at the end of his rope, but his life force was not completely cut off. Not to mention that his cultivation level had already reached the divine transformation realm. His life force was very tenacious to begin with. Just the chaotic Vajra spell alone had greatly increased his life force. The indestructible body was not cold for nothing. Although his body had been pierced through, it would not be easy to take his life. Most importantly, he still had the life-saving treasure, the 9 Revolutions Soul Return Pill. The 9 Revolutions Soul Return Pill had fused with the sap of the Tree of Life. It had the miraculous effect of reviving the dead and regenerating flesh and bones. Right now, his life force was severely depleted, which gave the 9 Revolutions Soul Return Pill a chance to display its miraculous effects. "You won't die." Empyrean Fairy and Li Xiaotian looked at him in a daze. They were both surprised and happy. With such serious injuries, they thought that he would definitely die, but they didn't expect him to be so optimistic. "Of course, cough cough, I won't die." Tang Zheng coughed violently, and blood flowed out from the corner of his mouth. This caused everyone's hearts to tighten again. Mo Xie was already sure that Tang Zheng still had a way to save his life. Furious, he took out his Ganjiang sword and tried to add another strike. How could the Empyrean Fairy turn a blind eye? She made a prompt decision and brought out the mountain river map to meet Mo Xie. Li Xiaotian supported him and said with concern, "Then hurry up and heal your wounds. Don't talk anymore." Tang Zheng didn't dare let his guard down. With a thought, a 9 Revolutions Soul Return Pill flew out from Sumeru World. He swallowed it in one gulp and the 9 Revolutions Soul Return Pill turned into a warm current. A powerful life force quickly flowed through his limbs, bones, and 8 extraordinary meridians. Spring came upon a withered tree, like a long drought met with a sweet rain. Tang Zheng's wounds stopped bleeding and scabbed over at a visible speed. His pale cheeks also regained some color. Within his body, invisible to the naked eye, the torn wound on Qi Yu's heart was rapidly healing. Qi Yu's blood had already flowed out completely and merged with Tang Zheng's blood. A powerful energy was hidden within. At this moment, the 9 Revolutions Soul Return Pill awakened this energy. In an instant, Tang Zheng was like a balloon, rapidly expanding and widening his meridians. His 9 main meridians were actually gradually closing in on each other and converging together. Tang Zheng couldn't help but let out a light snort. His eyes were also glowing with vitality. Although he was still very weak, at least his life was no longer in danger. Li Xiaotian was pleasantly surprised. He couldn't help but clench his hand and say, "The 9 Revolutions Soul Return Pill is indeed miraculous. Don't just focus on me. Hurry up and take this opportunity to shoot down the Golden Crow's soul. Tang Zheng urged. This was the most important matter at hand. Li Xiaotian also understood this point. He hurriedly gathered his thoughts and stood up with his head held high. He drew his bow and aimed at a Golden Crow's soul. Swoosh! The sun-shooting arrow tore through the air. Boom! With a shocking explosion, another Golden Crow's soul turned into specks of light. There were only 6 Golden Crow's souls left in the sky. The black hole that had been suspended in midair didn't disappear. The scattered specks of light were immediately sucked in by a huge attractive force. At this point, Tang Zheng had absorbed 3 Golden Crow souls. Everyone's spirit was greatly shaken. Not only did Tang Zheng not die, but he also found a way to restrain the Golden Crow's soul. It could be said that good things came in pairs. The Yellow Emperor's former subordinates were extremely angry. Wuxia loudly shouted, "Stop them!" Wuxia already understood that he didn't kill Tang Zheng. This brat's life was really too strong. However, the most important thing right now was to stop them from attacking the Golden Crow's soul. Wuxia multitasked. When another sun-shooting arrow came, he finally controlled the Golden Crow's soul and dodged the attack. When Li Xiaotian realized that his attack had missed, he couldn't help but feel gloomy. It seemed that his subsequent attacks wouldn't be so easy. As expected, in order to protect the Golden Crow's soul, Wuxia placed most of his attention on the Golden Crow's soul. He didn't even want to fight the Emperorian fairy head-on. The two of them had similar cultivation. When one of them chose not to fight head-on and kept retreating, the Emperorian fairy felt very helpless. The other Yellow Emperor's former subordinates attacked Tang Zheng madly. However, they were stopped by the 4 divine beasts, the Thundercloud Beast, and the Scarlet Lunar Beast. The Yellow Emperor's former subordinates had many people and were powerful. They forced the 4 divine beasts and the others to retreat step by step. However, they were still bitterly holding on, not letting the enemy attack the weakened Tang Zheng. Suddenly, a figure appeared in the sky. This person's speed didn't seem fast, but it was actually extremely fast. In the blink of an eye, he had already arrived at the peak of Sky Mountain. Chiu! He stood in the air, looked at the 6 souls of the Golden Crow in the sky, and then looked at the great battle on the ground. He instantly guessed most of what had happened. Tang Zheng and the others had actually stopped Wuxia and shot down the 3 souls of the Golden Crow. Without a doubt, this was a great victory, but also a difficult victory. Qiyu was indeed an expert, but it would not be easy for him to shoot down the Golden Crow's soul so quickly. Of course, Qiyu knew that this was definitely the effect of the heaven-shocking bow and the shooting sun arrows. These 2 divine weapons were the sworn enemies of the Golden Crow's soul. They were the best at restraining the Golden Crow's soul. When he saw Li Xiaotian pulling the bow and arrow, he clicked his tongue in wonder. This time, she was actually so proficient in using the heaven-shocking bow and the shooting sun arrows. Although he and Tang Zheng were mortal enemies, at this moment, if he wanted to resolve this crisis and stop the plans of the Yellow Emperor's former subordinates, he had to cooperate with Tang Zheng and the others. Otherwise, it would not be easy for him to completely shoot down the soul of the Golden Crow by himself. When he saw Tang Zheng suck the last bit of light from the Golden Crow's soul into the black hole, he immediately understood Tang Zheng's intentions. This way, he could solve the problem of the Golden Crow's soul once and for all. Genius! You actually thought of this method. Although they were enemies, Qiyu still couldn't help but praise them in his heart. Qiyu's gaze turned and fixed on Wuxia, and said coldly, "Wuxia, we meet again. Last time you ambushed me, this time, let's see what kind of waves you can stir up." Last time, Wuxia was able to ambush Qiyu and even killed the Saint King, causing Qiyu to suffer heavy losses. This time, of course, he would take revenge. Wuxia had already seen Qiyu quickly flying over, and his heart couldn't help but thump. He was already barely able to deal with Li Xiaotian, but with Qiyu, even if he had 3 heads and 6 arms, he definitely wouldn't be a match for them. Hearing Qiyu's words, Wuxia already understood the hatred in Qiyu's heart. He repelled the Emperorian fairy with one move and retreated, increasing the distance between him and the Emperorian fairy. It was precisely because of this distraction that one of the Golden Crow's souls temporarily escaped his control and was hit by the shooting sun arrow, turning into countless specks of light. Yeah. Li Xiaotian's eyes lit up, and he secretly cheered. "Ha ha ha, your Golden Crow souls are about to all perish and completely disappear from this world." Qiyu laughed heartily. Wuxia's heart was bleeding, His goal was getting more and more out of reach, causing his fighting spirit to be greatly affected. The black hole once again showed its might, crazily absorbing the Golden Crow souls, and not long later, all of the Golden Crow souls were completely sucked into the black hole. Qiyu personally witnessed the entire process, and his heart became more and more shocked. The power of the sky-devouring technique was truly beyond his expectations. The sky-devouring technique is a technique passed down since ancient times, and it has always been regarded as useless. I also thought so at that time, and didn't pay attention to it at all. This is really a huge loss. That brat sky-devouring technique was an incomplete version found in Langia, which is why it can be completed. How did my witch tribe's divine ability fall into the hands of the dragon tribe's Langia? There must be some secrets that I don't know. Of course, if I can get the completed version of the sky-devouring technique, maybe it can be even more powerful in my hands. Chapter 1343. Tang Zheng naturally did not know that Qiyu was actually thinking about the sky-devouring technique. All his attention was focused on the black hole. Although he was still very weak, it did not affect his control of the black hole. The sky-devouring technique had evolved to a very powerful realm. Once the black hole was activated, Tang Zheng did not need to worry about maintaining it at all times. Therefore, although the black hole was working, it did not consume much energy and did not need to worry about it. When the 4 souls of the Golden Crow were completely sucked into the black hole, a strange sound appeared in Tang Zheng's body. A familiar feeling arose spontaneously. Tang Zheng's heart skipped a beat. He had a bad feeling. Last time, he had absorbed the aura of the wilderness so that the world would not become a wilderness. In the end, for some reason, the aura of the wilderness that was sucked into the black hole ran into his body. It seemed that the black hole had the ability to refine energy. When the black hole absorbed an extremely powerful energy, the energy would not disappear into thin air. Instead, it would fuse into his body. After that, he had racked his brains, but he could not figure out why. He subconsciously thought that this was only useful for the aura of the wilderness. Therefore, when he used the sky-devouring technique to absorb the souls of the Golden Crow, he did not think too much about it. But now, he suddenly realized that his idea was too simple. Not only could the sky-devouring technique absorb the aura of the wilderness, but even the scattered souls of the Golden Crow were no exception. It seemed that these souls of the Golden Crow would also fuse into his body. That strange sound seemed to be the switch that opened the curtains to all of this. Boom! Vast and mighty energy appeared out of thin air and appeared in Tang Zheng's body. Tang Zheng was startled and his expression changed drastically. This energy was indeed very powerful, but this was the soul of the Golden Crow. There was no need to explain how abundant the yang energy contained in it was. Tang Zheng's face turned pale. The pure yang energy was immediately detonated. The soul of the Golden Crow was the fuse. It completely detonated Tang Zheng's pure yang energy. His facial muscles immediately twisted together. It was extremely terrifying and painful. Ah! He screamed at the top of his lungs, frightening the others. Everyone thought that Tang Zheng had already passed the critical period and was safe and sound, but this scream showed that they were too naive. Tang Zheng did not survive the danger. On the contrary, the problem he faced was even more serious. Li Xiaotian's attention was immediately drawn over. He turned his head to look at him and wanted to rush back without a care for his own safety. Don't! Tang Zheng quickly waved his hand to stop her. Destroy all the Golden Crow souls. Li Xiaotian stopped in her tracks. She had a conflicted expression on her face. She was worried about Tang Zheng, but at the same time, she understood that she had a great responsibility. Only the divine weapon in her hand could shoot down the soul of the Golden Crow. Tang Zheng suddenly turned his head and stared straight at Qiyu. He said, Qiyu, the remaining souls of the Golden Crow must be destroyed as well. You know what I mean. Qiyu obviously knew what he meant. He nodded lightly. Your pure yang energy has already been activated. Can you still hold on? Tang Zheng gritted his teeth and said, This is my problem. You only need to restrain Mo Xie, and let Li Xiaotian successfully shoot down the other souls of the Golden Crow. Qiyu said indifferently, Brat, although you are my enemy, we still have a period of time together. Since you are willing to sacrifice yourself to destroy the souls of the Golden Crow, this point coincides with mine. I have disliked these souls of the Golden Crow since tens of thousands of years ago. They were nurtured by the Yellow Emperor's soul. If we destroy the souls of the Golden Crow, then the Yellow Emperor will never be able to revive. Ha ha ha. Wuxia heard this and flew into a rage. He roared, Tang Zheng, do you know what you are doing? If Master does not revive, then Qi Yu will unify the world. Can you bear this responsibility? Even with the pressure of righteousness, Tang Zheng was not overwhelmed. Instead, he stood up resolutely. He resisted the pure yang energy while saying, I don't know so many principles. I only know that the soul of the Golden Crow will destroy this world and cause most people to die. I won't watch this happen, and that's enough. You are short-sighted. Although there will be a certain sacrifice, Master will definitely lead humanity to greater glory. Wuxia corrected him righteously. I don't want this kind of glory. Tang Zheng's answer was resolute and decisive. He did not hesitate at all. Why are you talking so much nonsense with Wuxia? He has already been brainwashed by the Yellow Emperor. He thinks that he is the only wise master in the world and that everyone else is worthless. Qi Yu said jokingly. Tang Zheng did not say one more thing. He still had the inner demons as a secret weapon. If Qi Yu really did go against the flow, then he naturally had the inner demons to deal with him. Moreover, his strength was not static. One day, his cultivation would catch up to Qi Yu and even surpass him. At that time, he would not have the chance to jump around even if he wanted to. The harmful effects of the soul of the Golden Crow were obvious, and right now, Tang Zheng would naturally choose to solve this problem first. You will regret it. Wuxia gnashed his teeth and roared hysterically. Tang Zheng quietly replied, I will not regret it. Wuxia, you have already said enough nonsense. Now, there is no need for you to say any more. Qi Yu mocked as his figure flashed and attacked Wuxia. Wuxia hurriedly used his Ganjiang sword to meet the enemy. Empyrean Fairy looked deeply at Qi Yu and automatically took a few steps back. She had already seen through Qi Yu's intentions. Qi Yu's cultivation had already far surpassed hers and Wuxia's. If he wanted to deal with Wuxia, it would not be difficult at all. Empyrean Fairy had expended too much energy in the previous battle. At this time, she needed to conserve her energy and recover her strength. This was to prevent Qi Yu from turning his attention to them after dealing with Wuxia. Empyrean Fairy was very meticulous and cleverly thought of this point. Qi Yu did not mind. In his eyes, he could deal with Wuxia even without Empyrean Fairy's help. Empyrean Fairy retreated to Tang Zheng's side and a cool wave of purine energy spread through the air toward Tang Zheng. Purine energy could be emitted from a person's body, but it was very weak. However, Empyrean Fairy had the 9 saint body and contained too much purine energy. Therefore, when she approached Tang Zheng was like a person who was about to die of thirst and finally saw a clear spring. His eyes lit up and he greedily absorbed the purine energy. Empyrean Fairy also felt the change in the purine energy in her body. She looked at Tang Zheng and understood everything. She was very clear about the danger that Tang Zheng was facing. If she did not help him, she was afraid that he would eventually explode and die. Li Xiaotian took the initiative to kiss her in front of everyone. This kind of feat was too difficult for Empyrean Fairy. Although she had done it before, it was in a deserted place after all. She did not do the same thing. Instead, she held Tang Zheng's hand and the purine energy rushed into Tang Zheng's body like a river. Tang Zheng was shocked and stared at Empyrean Fairy. Restrain the pure yang energy and save your life, Empyrean Fairy said expressionlessly. Tang Zheng nodded his head gratefully and hurriedly absorbed the purine energy. Although he was only absorbing the purine energy from her hand, which was not as fast as intimate contact, but after all, the 9 heavenly maiden had the 9 saint body. With enough purine energy, she could help Tang Zheng solve his urgent problem. The pure yang energy in his heart gradually calmed down, alleviating his pain. Boom! Suddenly, another Golden Crow soul was hit by the shooting sun arrow and exploded into pieces. Whoosh whoosh! The black hole sucked in many light spots of the Golden Crow souls. The pure yang energy that had just calmed down was immediately affected and became restless, as if it was about to break free of control. Empyrean Fairy was shocked and her eyes widened. Tang Zheng smiled bitterly. Before the Golden Crow souls were completely dealt with, the purine energy that he absorbed from Empyrean Fairy was like a drop in the bucket. It could not completely change the situation. The 5 souls of the Golden Crow were all absorbed by the sky-swallowing skill. This energy was majestically integrated into Tang Zheng's body. He could not help but let out a heart-wrenching scream again. "Tang Zheng, how are you?" Empyrean Fairy asked anxiously. Tang Zheng was tortured by the pure yang energy, and did not have time to answer Empyrean Fairy. The veins on his forehead were bulging and he was sweating profusely. Obviously, the pure yin energy that he absorbed from Empyrean Fairy was not enough to change the situation. He had to absorb more pure yin energy to suppress the pure yang energy. Tang Zheng and Empyrean Fairy understood this very well. Tang Zheng was silent and only gritted his teeth to hold on. However, the situation was getting worse. Empyrean Fairy was also biting her lips and struggling in her heart. She had a way to give Tang Zheng more pure yin energy, but it required more intimate contact. Under the watchful eyes of everyone and in broad daylight, her thoughts were very nutritious. Furthermore, they were from ancient times. One could imagine how big of a problem this was. However, she could only watch as Tang Zheng was in more and more pain. Especially when another golden crow soul exploded and Tang Zheng absorbed all of the golden crow souls. The pain became even more torturous and almost unbearable. If Li Xiaotian can do it, why can't I? This is a critical moment of life and death. How can I still have such absurd thoughts? Empyrean Fairy silently criticized herself. Finally, she gritted her teeth and hugged Tang Zheng. Her cherry lips immediately moved forward. Smack! Their mouths were tightly pressed together. A refreshing feeling spread from his mouth to his entire body, refreshing his mind. He looked at the Empyrean maiden in shock with what was left of his rationality. She had actually taken the initiative to kiss him in order to save him. This sacrifice was not small. Empyrean Fairy pretended to be calm and looked at Tang Zheng without changing her expression. Instead, she was silently encouraging him. Tang Zheng understood the look in her eyes. Since she had sacrificed so much, he could not let her good intentions down. Therefore, he did not hesitate to absorb the pure yin energy. The last time, the Nine Heavens Maiden saved Tang Zheng was when he was unconscious. This time, their eyes met, and they looked at each other with a clear and fresh gaze. The atmosphere was completely different, causing complicated thoughts to surge in Empyrean Fairy's mind. Tang Zheng was still absorbing the pure yin energy, but before he could restrain the pure yang energy, he heard two more bangs. Two more golden crow souls were hit. The spots of light were like a gust of wind that was sucked into the black hole. Chapter 1344. The two exploding souls of the golden crow quickly flew towards the black hole. The black hole seemed to have tasted the sweetness as it frantically absorbed the souls of the golden crow. This caused Tang Zheng to suffer. His body was completely filled with agitated pure yang energy. The Empyrean Fairy's pure yin energy was simply a drop in the bucket. Looking at Tang Zheng's conflicted and painful appearance, the Empyrean Fairy also understood this point. Her heart trembled as she revealed a difficult expression. This level of intimate contact was simply not enough to replenish enough pure yin energy. Tang Zheng was facing great danger unless she could change to a more intimate method. Of course, she knew what kind of method it was. She had occasionally heard Tang Zheng communicate with other girls in this way. Just listening to it made her feel unbearably shy. After all, most of her thinking was still the model of the ancient people. The 3 obediences and 4 virtues were deeply ingrained in people's minds and were not easy to change. If she had more intimate contact with Tang Zheng, she really could not imagine what kind of scene it would be. Just thinking about it made her feel weak and shy all over. Although the Empyrean Fairy was powerful, she was still a girl in the end. She had many of a girl's natural instincts. Ah! Tang Zheng could not help but cry out. The intense pain almost engulfed his nerves. The pure yang energy this time was more violent than any previous time. It seemed like it was really going to end his life. Bang! Tang Zheng knelt on the ground with one knee. The stones on the ground were heavily smashed by his knee and shattered into pieces. Tang Zheng! The Empyrean Fairy involuntarily separated from him and subconsciously shouted. Stop! Stop absorbing the soul of the golden crow. Otherwise, you will definitely die. The Empyrean Fairy's persuasion did not work. Tang Zheng clenched his teeth and shook his head with difficulty. He squeezed out a few words from between his teeth. No, I must finish absorbing the soul of the golden crow. I can't let it remain in this world. His attitude was firm. The Empyrean Fairy could tell from his tone and eyes. She subconsciously raised her head and saw the black hole in mid-air, frantically absorbing the soul of the golden crow. She wanted to destroy the black hole, but she immediately dismissed the idea. She had seen the miraculous power of the sky-swallowing technique too many times, and she knew very well that she might not be able to destroy the black hole. Moreover, this was Tang Zheng's wish. If he destroyed the black hole, what if he suffered a backlash? Do I really have to give myself to him? The Empyrean fairy thought in a daze. She was extremely conflicted. Boom! The 8th golden crow's soul was hit by the shooting sun arrow and exploded into light fragments. Ah, no! Mosia's heart-wrenching cry resounded through the clouds, but he was powerless to protect himself, so how could he care about the golden crow's soul? There was only one golden crow left. If it was shot down again, then Mosia would have no hope at all. Seeing Li Xiaotian draw his bow and aim at the golden crow's soul, Mosia's heart was resolute. He hysterically shouted, "Don't even think about hurting it." Whoosh! Mosia multitasked, controlling the golden crow's soul and dodging the shooting sun arrow's attack. Bang! However, multitasking had serious consequences. Qiyu was already closing in on him step by step and was surrounded by danger. His distraction immediately allowed Qiyu to seize the opportunity. The battle spirit sword pierced through the air with a brilliant heavenly might. Mosia was completely unable to block it and had nowhere to hide. Clang! The two swords clashed. The Ganjiang sword bounced back and fiercely hit Mosia's chest, letting out a dull sound. Mosia was sent flying backwards. Before Mosia could stabilize his body, he heard a small cracking sound. His heart trembled as he quickly stared at the Ganjiang sword. A crack appeared on the sword's body. It was clearly the place where the Battle Soul sword had clashed. The Ganjiang sword and the Battle Soul sword were both saint weapons. They both had sword souls, but in different hands, they would release different powers. The Battle Soul sword was clearly stronger and actually damaged the Ganjiang sword. His beloved sword being damaged, Mosia felt as if he had been struck by lightning. With a pu sound, his body leaned forward and spat out a mouthful of blood. His face became dispirited. The Ganjiang sword was actually damaged. He muttered to himself as if he was possessed. Ever since the Ganjiang sword was refined, it had accompanied him for countless years. In hundreds and thousands of battles, the Ganjiang sword had always helped him. It was like a part of his life. But this time, the Ganjiang sword was damaged. It was as if a part of his life was damaged. One could imagine how he felt. Suddenly, he felt something and raised his head. His gaze shifted from the Ganjiang sword to the sky. The remaining golden crow's soul was still emitting light and heat. However, a green shooting sun arrow approached it. No! He shouted and tried to control the golden crow's soul to dodge, but Qiyu had already arrived in front of him and raised the Battle Soul sword. Whoosh! The Battle Soul sword fell, bringing along a sharp sword chi that filled the sky, completely locking onto Mosia. This was the threat of death, as if the god of death was summoning him. He finally couldn't care less about controlling the golden crow's soul. Taking a deep breath, he used all his strength to raise the Ganjiang sword. Whoosh! The Ganjiang sword was raised, bringing along a blood-red light that dyed half the sky red as it faced the Battle Soul sword. Boom! With an explosion, the golden crow's soul was struck and turned into specks of light that filled the sky. At this point, the 9 golden crow's souls were completely shot down. The sky suddenly darkened and turned from day to night. The air was no longer dry and hot. The heaven and earth were no longer a huge furnace. The 9 insufferably arrogant golden crow's souls were completely reduced to history. Especially when all the specks of light disappeared into the black hole, the golden crow's soul had completely disappeared from the stage of history. When the black hole disappeared, Tang Zheng tumbled and fiercely fell to the ground. Without enough pure yin energy to balance it, he had no way to restrain the restless pure yang energy in his body. However, he was very happy to finally see the golden crow's soul completely disappear. This meant that the apocalyptic crisis had temporarily disappeared and he had succeeded. Tang Zheng! The Empyrean maiden was startled and hurriedly supported him. The pure yin energy from the skin contact was like a drop in the bucket. Although it gradually seeped into Tang Zheng's body through the skin, it was not enough to change the situation. With great difficulty, Tang Zheng squeezed his eyes into slits. Like a child, he innocently said from the bottom of his heart, I succeeded. The Empyrean fairy's heart felt as if it had been fiercely struck. In her life, she had seen too many ambitious and ruthless people. However, she had never seen anyone who was willing to sacrifice their life for countless unrelated people. Tang Zheng was the first person to do so. The impact in the depths of her heart was not small. Her eyes were almost blurred as she stared straight at him. At this moment, Tang Zheng's image was incomparably great. It was as if he could support the heavens and earth. No one could compare to him. Qi Yu and Mo Xie's cultivation were higher than his. But so what? In the Empyrean fairy's heart, these two people were more concerned about themselves and their own power. However, neither of them thought about those unrelated people. Those people were like ants that could not even cause a ripple in their hearts. Boom! A ball of flame jumped out from Tang Zheng's body. With a touch of his clothes, Tang Zheng began to burn fiercely. This was the sign of the pure yang energy completely erupting. The flames grew bigger and bigger. Not long later, Tang Zheng became naked, completely exposed in front of the Empyrean fairy. The raging flames were unable to harm the Empyrean fairy. She stared straight at him, completely at a loss. His physique was very strong, with well-defined pecs and 8-pack abs. His Apollo's belt was clearly visible. Her gaze could not help but move downwards. She glanced at him and immediately retracted her gaze. Her heart was palpitating, as if her heart was beating wildly. She could even hear her own violent heartbeat. Her breathing could not help but become hurried. From ancient times until now, she had never been like this. Of course, she understood the reason behind it. However, she was unable to make up her mind. Mo Xie was forced into a corner by Qi Yu. When the Ganjiang sword and War Spirit sword collided once again, the powerful force destroyed everything. His fingers loosened and the Ganjiang sword flew out of his hand. "Come back!" he shouted loudly, trying to summon the Ganjiang sword back. Unfortunately, the Ganjiang sword did not respond at all. Kacha! Another crisp cracking sound caused Mo Xie's heart to instantly fall into the abyss of despair. He watched helplessly as the Ganjiang sword split into two into four, and finally into countless fragments that scattered in the air. The Ganjiang sword was completely destroyed. A peerlessly powerful sacred artifact had ended its life just like that. Even the sword spirit was no exception. It was torn into pieces by War Spirit sword's powerful sword Qi, destroying the Ganjiang sword from its foundation. Puff, puff. Large amounts of blood spurted out from Mo Xie's mouth. His expression was lifeless, as if he had become a fool. He had truly suffered too much of a blow. The soul of the Golden Crow and the Ganjiang sword had been destroyed together. His life had practically reached a dead end. Suddenly, he saw Tang Zheng burning in flames. His despair immediately turned incomparably malevolent as he shouted hysterically, "Tang Zheng, all of this was caused by you. Now you have reaped what you sowed. With the eruption of pure yang energy, you will undoubtedly die." Qi Yu also turned his head and stared at Tang Zheng in a daze, as if he was reminiscing about his past self. He also had the 9-yang saint body, but since he was young, his strength was strong. Who knows how many women took the initiative to throw themselves at him, so before the age of 20, he had enough pure yin energy to balance his pure yang energy. When he was 20, he used a great divine ability and a great opportunity to walk out of the shadow of his death from the explosion of his body. From then on, the pure yang energy in his body had reached a peaceful state. There was no need to worry about this point. He had so many resources by his side but wasted them all. He deserved it. It's just a pity that such a good body was wasted. Qi Yu shook his head and sighed. Qi Yu had occupied Song Yu's body. This body naturally could not be compared to the 9-yang saint body. However, Qi Yu was an expert after all. He used other aspects to gradually make up for this flaw. Of course, this took him a lot of effort and wasted a lot of time. Tang Zheng struggled in the flames. Although the Empyrean fairy exploded him, she was helpless. It was as if he had truly reached the end of his life. Chapter 1345. The Empyrean fairy hugged Tang Zheng as she struggled internally. It was not as easy as the previous battle. "What's wrong with him?" Li Xiaotian rushed over and anxiously asked. She finally gathered her energy and used the shooting sun arrows to shoot down all the Golden Crow, turning the earth into night once again. Although it was night, the flames on Tang Zheng's body illuminated the peak of Heavenly Mountain, allowing them to see everything clearly. His pure yang energy has erupted. I'm afraid he won't live for long. The Empyrean fairy hesitantly said. What, he won't live for long? Then what do we do? Li Xiaotian was shocked. Draw a large amount of pure yin energy into your body and balance it with pure yang energy. Apart from this, there's no other way. The Empyrean fairy explained. Without the slightest hesitation, Li Xiaotian walked towards Tang Zheng step by step, like a brave warrior. She naturally understood the meaning behind the Empyrean fairy's words. She had to have a relationship with him in order to have enough pure yin energy to balance the pure yang energy. This way, he would be able to escape this calamity. What are you going to do? The Empyrean fairy stared at her as she asked in shock. Li Xiaotian's expression did not change as she said, Of course I'm going to save him. You want to save him? The Empyrean fairy was shocked by Li Xiaotian's decisiveness. She did not hesitate at all as she happily made this decision. This made the Empyrean fairy feel a bit ashamed. He can't die. He is a hero. A hero should not die, Li Xiaotian said. The Empyrean fairy hesitated for a moment before hesitantly saying, But you're sacrificing too much. Li Xiaotian's lips hooked up in a beautiful arc. Her charm was imperceptibly displayed, causing people's hearts to flutter. Not only men, but even the Empyrean fairy felt that Li Xiaotian was incredibly moving. Sacrifice? Is this a sacrifice? This kind of hero, who knows how many women in the world would fall for him? I'm the one who took advantage of him. Cheap. The Empyrean fairy found it hard to understand what she was thinking, but she was also deeply shocked by her words. Do you know the relationship between him and the women in the family? Are you still willing to be one of them? Asked the Empyrean fairy. What's wrong with that? If this is not a good thing, why do those people want to keep him away from me and take him for themselves? After hearing Li Xiaotian's question, the Empyrean fairy was speechless. Those people like him in the open and in the dark. They are inextricably linked to him. Even Mu Hongyan is no exception. Li Xiaotian said as she walked to Tang Zheng's side. The raging flames did not stop her at all. What, Mu Hongyan? The Empyrean fairy cried out involuntarily. Why is she with Tang Zheng? Hee, what's there to be surprised about? Outstanding men have always attracted countless women. How did you find out? Li Xiaotian did not answer. Under the same roof, no matter how well it was hidden, there would still be clues. Li Xiaotian's mind was far better than others. She was very observant, so naturally, she did not notice anything fishy. She was not surprised and chose to keep Tang Zheng's secret. The two people involved thought that their plan was flawless, but they did not know that Li Xiaotian had already discovered it. Li Xiaotian raised her foot and stepped into the flames, ignoring them. The flames immediately ignited her clothes. She did not scream. This flame was very different from ordinary flames. It was an effect produced by the release of pure yang energy. After he stepped into the flames, he was completely enveloped by the flames. The Empyrean fairy subconsciously took a few steps back, distancing herself from the flames. The flames were too dazzling. It was like a fiery red curtain, blocking Tang Zheng and Li Xiaotian. From the outside, it was impossible to see the situation inside. The Empyrean fairy's expression kept changing. She stared at the flames without blinking. Of course, she knew what was happening inside. She had a strange feeling in her heart. Why can she do it without hesitation, but I can't? Tang Zheng is very outstanding. Other than my father, he is more outstanding than any man I have ever met. If I were to be with him, he would definitely be an excellent partner. Unconsciously, she felt a slight sourness in her heart. She stared at the flames in a daze. Qi Yu and Wuxia saw Li Xiaotian walk into the flames, but they did not stop her. Qi Yu snorted disdainfully. It's too late. The pure yang energy has completely erupted, and it is extraordinarily strong. Her strength alone is not enough to help him overcome this crisis. That's why he's dead for sure, Wuxia said, venting his hatred. His hatred for Tang Zheng could be described as monstrous. Now it's your turn to die, Qi Yu said as he looked at Wuxia with killing intent. You really want to kill me? Wuxia asked. Qi Yu laughed loudly. At this point, do you still want to ask such an idiotic question? Wuxia was dejected. There was indeed no need to ask. The two of them were mortal enemies and both wanted to kill the other. General Mo, quickly leave. Suddenly, shouts rang out. The Yellow Emperor's old subordinates at the peak of Heavenly Mountain all gave up on their battle with the four symbols venerables. They rushed into the sky and attacked Chiyu. Wuxia had almost given up hope, but the actions of his subordinates reignited the light of hope. Whoosh! He retreated without any hesitation. The Yellow Emperor's old subordinates attacked Chiyu from all directions. Chiyu's killing intent surged as he roared. Reckless things, seeking your own deaths. I'll help you. Battle soul slash down. With Chiyu as the center, the sword light flew in all directions. This was only one sword, but it was more tyrannical, sharp, and decisive than tens of thousands of swords. Shwa, shwa, shwa. The sword light was like rain, rapidly falling down. The Yellow Emperor's old subordinates all raised their treasures in an attempt to block. But all of this was futile under Battle Soul. All of the treasures could not withstand a single blow. There was only the sound of the sword light hitting treasures and bodies. In the next second, everything was silent. All of the attacks collapsed. The old subordinates of the Yellow Emperor seemed to have been immobilized and were frozen in midair. Wuxia did not stop and did not look back because he knew that the outcome had already been decided. Save me, save me. A weak voice entered Wuxia's ears. His heart trembled as he saw the dying Yi Meiyu lying on the ground not far away, looking at him pleadingly. Yi Meiyu had suffered heavy injuries and could only watch as her own people were defeated and her so-called plan was foiled. She was on the verge of despair. She knew very well that in such a tragic battle, what awaited her was death. The only thing that comforted her was that Chiyu was certain that Tang Zhang would die without a doubt. Tang Zhang was finally going to die. She was overjoyed. She had looked forward to this countless times, but she was always disappointed. She was on the verge of despair, thinking that Tang Zhang was a monster that would not die. Finally, good news came from the heavens. Tang Zhang was no longer able to create a miracle. She really wanted to see Yi Dingdong's reaction after hearing the news. It would definitely be very exciting. She was looking forward to seeing that scene. Of course, all of this was her idea. The current plan was to preserve her life so that she could see that scene. Therefore, she used all her strength to shout weakly. As expected, Wuxia heard it and looked at her. She immediately looked at him pitifully and lovingly. Wuxia waved his hand and the ring on his finger released a bright light. He kept Yi Meiyu inside and flew into the distance with a whoosh. Yi Meiyu was the successor of the Nightmare Lord and controlled the heart's dream. She was of great use to Wuxia, so he would naturally save her. However, he had no way of saving his other subordinates because they had to block Chiyu. A few of them could not block him, so all of them had to press forward to stall Chiyu and give him a chance to escape. A dignified expert of the Mahayana realm had to run for his life. If word got out, it would be extremely embarrassing. But for the sake of his life, so what if he lost face? He seemed to be afraid of seeing his subordinates die miserably at the hands of Chiyu. He only glanced at the raging flames on the mountain peak from the corner of his eyes, and then, without caring about his own safety, he used all his strength to escape. The old subordinates of the Yellow Emperor froze in mid-air. A few seconds later, their magic treasure S shattered into pieces. Following that, they shattered into pieces. Blood splattered everywhere. It was an incomparably tragic sight. The sword light of the War Soul Sword was like silk. Not only did it kill these people, it also cut them into pieces. Only Chiyu would be able to use such a terrifying technique, causing others to feel fear. Looking at the terrifying deaths of their companions, the remaining old subordinates of the Yellow Emperor did not escape. Tens of thousands of years ago, they were the most valiant and tenacious warriors, and now they were still the same. They didn't even need to exchange glances to encourage each other. They just stared straight at Chiyu and charged forward without hesitation. Swoosh, swoosh, swoosh. The War Soul Sword flew up again. The sword light was resplendent, dispersing the darkness. In everyone's eyes, there was only the sword light left. It was extremely resplendent and terrifying. The air seemed to have frozen again. The old subordinates of the Yellow Emperor froze again. Everything was the same as before. Everyone turned into pieces again, but this time, they were even finer. Obviously, Chiyu watched Wuxia escape with his own eyes while he was entangled by these people. The anger in his heart was too strong. Wuxia, this is what you get for attacking me last time. Saint King is dead. I want all of you to die with him. Qiyu roared. His voice was like thunder, rumbling and spreading. The old subordinates of the Yellow Emperor heard this voice. Wuxia, who had already escaped far away, also heard this voice. His heart was as cold as 10,000 years of ice. The Empyrean fairy was also attracted by this voice. She muttered to herself in shock. Saint King is dead? She had a deep impression of Saint King. Could it be that after the Battle of Mount Tai, the demons were ambushed by the old subordinates of the Yellow Emperor and Saint King was killed by Wuxia? That must be it. The mantis stalks the cicada, unaware of the oriole behind. Saint King escaped with the injured Qiyu, but they fell into the encirclement of the old subordinates of the Yellow Emperor. No wonder Qiyu was so angry and used such a terrifying method to kill the old subordinates of the Yellow Emperor. She had no sympathy. Both sides were her enemies. If they hurt each other, she would be able to reap the benefits. However, she couldn't feel happy. Looking at the raging flames, her heart was in turmoil. Was Li Xiaotian really unable to save Tang Zheng? Chapter 1346. The Empyrean fairy was worried about Tang Zheng and Li Xiaotian. Before she could decide what to do, Qiyu had already wiped out all of the Yellow Emperor's former subordinates. Mountains of corpses and seas of blood. The peak of Heavenly Mountain was like hell on earth. Qiyu descended from the sky and walked towards the Empyrean fairy step by step, saying, Fu Yao, he can't be saved. The Empyrean fairy suddenly turned her head and looked at Qiyu, who was covered in killing intent. She expressionlessly said, He won't die. The heaven-swallowing technique can absorb energy from the outside world and transfer it into his body. Last time, the savage aura was like this. He was lucky enough to survive, but this time is different. Seeing the Empyrean fairy remain silent, Qiyu was not in a rush to attack and slowly said, Do you know how terrifying the energy contained within the 9 golden crow souls is? If anyone were to absorb the energy within, their strength would definitely increase by a terrifying amount. However, there is no such thing as a free lunch in this world. That much energy is like a bomb that cannot be completely absorbed by a single person. It would be enough to explode one's meridians and body. Moreover, he has the 9 Yang Saint body and the Golden Crow soul has already ignited his pure Yang energy. With these 2 fatal conditions added together, even an immortal would find it difficult to save him. Qiyu spoke with certainty and did not seem to be lying. The Empyrean fairy was able to discern this and her heart skipped a beat. Although she had already guessed that the situation would be dire, she did not think that it would be this severe. What should she do now? Should she just let him die? No. She immediately made a decision in her heart. She definitely would not just watch him die. She walked towards the flames without hesitation. Qiyu was shocked and loudly shouted, What are you doing? Do you want to make a meaningless sacrifice? The Empyrean fairy turned a deaf ear to him and walked with firm steps. Her eyes were resolute. Don't even think about it. Qiyu immediately ran towards the Empyrean fairy. The distance between them was not far to begin with, so he arrived almost instantly. He wanted to stop her. Didn't you say that no one can save him? Why don't you let me have a try? The Empyrean fairy was blocked and asked jokingly. Qiyu's face stiffened. He did think so, but there was nothing absolute in this world. Especially since Tang Zheng was too strange, Qiyu would not allow anything to happen to him. If the Empyrean fairy broke in and caused an accident, he would regret it so much that his intestines would turn green. No, Qiyu said bluntly. Hee, looks like you're not 100% sure either, the Empyrean fairy mocked. Qiyu's expression turned ugly as he said, Of course I'm 100% sure. The Empyrean fairy shook her head. You're just fooling yourself. I have to save him. You can't stop me. After saying this, she lifted her foot and stepped into the flames. In front of me, don't even think about disobeying me. Qiyu shouted. Battle soul flashed and enveloped her. From front to back, left to right, the Empyrean fairy seemed to be in a dangerous whirlpool. The sharp sword Qi blocked her steps. Although it was only a step away, she could not cross it no matter what. You're only a first-grade Mahayana realm cultivator. You won't be able to jump in my hands. Just give up. Qiyu changed his sword technique and the sword light quickly gathered. It was like a cage, firmly trapping her. If she dared to take half a step, she would be injured by the sword light. The Empyrean fairy understood this point, but she did not hesitate to take this step. Puh! Blood splattered. The Empyrean fairy was injured and blood flowed out. Roar! With a roar, the Thundercloud Beast and the Scarlet Moon Beast attacked Qiyu at the same time. They also wanted to do their part to stop Qiyu. Qiyu casually waved his hand and an invisible sword Qi burst out from his fingertips. He did not use a sword at all. With just his fingers, the sword Qi burst out was far beyond the imagination of ordinary people. Pang pang! The two strange beasts flew out. They did not even have time to scream before they fell into the distance. They smashed into two large craters and dust flew everywhere. They wanted to get up again, but after trying, they fell to the ground again. They gasped for breath and could not get up again. Two little things who don't know death. Qiyu snorted. A huge shadow shrouded over his head. Qiyu raised his eyelids and saw the four symbols Venerable's huge figure. Qiyu's expression changed. He said with a complicated tone, "Do you want to be my enemy?" The four symbols Venerable originally obeyed his orders, but now it was dead set on following Tang Zheng. One could imagine how Qiyu felt. The four symbols Venerable did not answer, but its actions showed its answer. Whoosh! A huge arm came crashing down with the force of 10,000 caddies. Your fate was already decided the moment you betrayed me. Qiyu was filled with killing intent. He raised two fingers and put them together. They were not inferior to a sword at all. He pointed lightly and the two fingers directly hit the four symbols Venerable. Puh! A small hole appeared in the chest of the indestructible four symbols Venerable. The four symbols Venerable was injured. This scene was simply too shocking. The Empyrean fairy saw this and opened her eyes wide in disbelief. She had always thought that the four symbols Venerable would never be injured. She never thought that she was too naive. Qiyu's understanding of the four symbols Venerable was far greater than others. Moreover, his current strength was too terrifying. Even the four symbols Venerable could not withstand the destructive power contained in this attack. The four symbols Venerable lowered its head, seemingly very surprised that it was injured. However, it did not retreat. Its arm still smashed down and hit Qiyu's shoulder. Bang! The dull sound was deafening. Qiyu frowned but did not retreat. He stared straight at the four symbols Venerable and said, "You dare to attack me?" He raised his hand and grabbed the four symbols Venerable's arm. One was big while the other was small. There was a huge gap between the two arms. However, the four symbols Venerable's arm was raised and made cracking sounds. The four symbols Venerable seemed to be struggling to resist Qiyu. However, it was futile. There was no way to truly resist Qiyu. The veins on Qiyu's arm bulged. With a sudden wave, the four symbols Venerable's huge body flew up into the sky. Whoosh! The sound of air being torn was heard. The four symbols Venerable turned into a black dot and streaked across the sky like a shooting star. It actually disappeared without a trace. The four symbols Venerable had been flung away by Qiyu. Moreover, it was unknown where it had landed. This scene was far more shocking than Qiyu defeating the Thundercloud Beast and the Scarlet Lunar Beast. The Empyrean fairy was flabbergasted and asked, "Qiyu, what realm has your cultivation reached?" "Haha, my cultivation is not something you can imagine." Qiyu did not say it explicitly, but there was no doubt that his cultivation had reached an extremely terrifying realm. The Empyrean fairy knew that there was no way she could do anything. "Empyrean fairy, surrender obediently and I can still spare your life," Qiyu said sternly. "Spare my life? Would you be so kind?" The Empyrean fairy said mockingly. "Of course. I will be kind occasionally." Of course, Qiyu would not be merciful. He had obtained some information from various sources. He had always known that the Empyrean fairy was the Emperor of Heaven's daughter. He did not know much about the Emperor of Heaven. After all, they were not from the same era. However, one thing was for sure. The Emperor of Heaven was an expert. Moreover, the Emperor of Heaven was not dead yet. Naturally, he wanted to recruit the Emperor of Heaven for his own use. The Empyrean fairy was a pawn to lure the Emperor of Heaven out. If the Emperor of Heaven submitted to him, then the father and daughter would naturally be able to live. If not, then it would not be difficult to catch them all in one fell swoop. It was just that he did not know that the Emperor of Heaven's soul had merged with Yan Qingyi's body. Otherwise, he would have gone to find Yan Qingyi long ago. He would not have gone to such lengths to capture the Empyrean fairy. The Saint King had died in battle. Qiyu no longer had a true general under his command. He was in urgent need of a general. The Emperor of Heaven was the most suitable candidate. This kind of general could replace him to do many things. After all, he could not do everything by himself. That would damage his image. After the demons transformed into the Jiuli tribe, although there were many people, there was no one who could be of great use. This was Qi Yu's predicament. The Empyrean fairy could not see through Qi Yu's thoughts. She did not believe that he would be kind. She coldly said, "No matter what you say, it is useless. I do not ask for your so-called mercy. I only want to save him." "Haha, impossible." Qi Yu laughed maniacally. Suddenly, his laughter came to an abrupt stop. Only one word came out of his mouth. "Trap." The ever-changing sword Qi was like an unbreakable rope that shrunk inward. The Empyrean fairy tried her best to struggle, but the painting of mountains and rivers of the gods of earth and veil could not shake it. In the end, the sword Qi completely trapped her. She could not move at all. It was as if she was tied up by a rope. The Empyrean fairy looked at the formless sword Qi in shock. The sword Qi had undergone a huge change. It had really become like a rope. Qiyu saw the shock in her heart and explained, "Sword Qi is a kind of energy. Therefore, it also has the characteristics of ordinary energy. It has many forms. Like water, it is ever-changing. For example, what you are seeing now." Only then did the Empyrean fairy realize that she was really a frog at the bottom of a well. She had always thought that sword Qi was extremely sharp and had no other form. However, the sword Qi that trapped her was not only sharp but also flexible. She finally understood that Qi Yu was a true master swordsman. The previous sword god and Tian Chanzi's transcendent flying immortal paled in comparison. They were not even worth mentioning. The funny thing is that Tang Zheng has always treated the transcendent flying immortal as a treasure. He doesn't know that this is the true ultimate sword technique. The true profoundness of swordsmanship is contained within. Qi Yu proudly showed off, not forgetting to mock Tang Zheng. The Empyrean fairy felt powerless. She wanted to resist, but after seeing this scene, she had no way to do so. In front of Qi Yu, she could not even die, let alone escape. This was the gap between them. There was also a gap between Mahayana realm cultivators. Qi Yu hooked his finger and the sword Qi lifted the Empyrean fairy and slowly flew toward Qi Yu. Finally, it stopped in front of Qi Yu. Their eyes met and Qi Yu clicked his tongue. "Qi Yu, that brat is really muddle-headed. He has the 9 yang saint body and you have the 9 yin saint body. You are a perfect match. If the two of you were to have sex, it would greatly benefit both of your cultivations. However, he is stubborn and did not touch you." The Empyrean fairy was both anxious and angry. She loudly rebuked. "Do you think he is like you? He is much more noble than you. What's the use of being noble? Strength is the most important." Qi Yu curled his lips and disdainfully said, "I also have the 9 yang saint body. I will not let go of such a good opportunity like yours." Chapter 1347. The Empyrean fairy stared at Qi Yu in shock and asked, "What do you want to do?" Qi Yu laughed loudly. "What do you think I want to do? Although I have the 9 yang saint body, I have already passed that life and death crisis. Why would I need you?" The Empyrean fairy let out a sigh of relief. "You have a greater use for me," Qi Yu said. "What use?" "You are the daughter of the Emperor of Heaven, so I want you to find your father." "My father?" The Empyrean fairy was shocked. "Why are you looking for him?" "To take him under my wing." Qi Yu's reply was straightforward. "What did I hear wrong?" The Empyrean fairy's eyes widened with a look of disbelief. Qi Yu did not care about her reaction and said, "You didn't hear wrong, I want to take him under my wing." The Empyrean fairy laughed loudly. As his daughter, she understood her father very well. He was someone who would rather break than bend. It had always been others who submitted to him, so how could he submit to others? No matter how strong that person was, he would never lower his head. "You think it's impossible?" "Of course it's impossible. In my world, nothing is impossible." Qi Yu was full of confidence. The Empyrean fairy coldly snorted and said, "You want to use me to threaten him? You are very smart." Qi Yu praised, not hiding his plan at all. "You will be disappointed because I also do not know where he is." The Empyrean fairy spoke the truth. The Emperor of Heaven and Yan Qingyi had merged into one, so Yan Qingyi was nowhere to be found. Naturally, there was no way to find the Emperor of Heaven. Speaking of which, the Empyrean fairy really wanted to find the Emperor of Heaven, but she had no clue. Qi Yu did not take it to heart and said indifferently, "Who said I'm going to look for him? He'll come for me. I'm sure of it. It's what any father would do." The meaning of this sentence was very obvious. Qi Yu wanted to use the Empyrean fairy as bait to lure the snake out of its hole so that the Emperor of Heaven would take the initiative to find him. Qi Yu's scheming was indeed very clever. The Empyrean fairy's expression changed. She fell silent, not knowing what to do. She knew how much her father loved her. If he knew the news, he would still come to save her regardless of whether it was a mountain of knives or a sea of fire. She wasn't sure if her father was a match for Qi Yu. The current Qi Yu was too unfathomable, causing people to feel a deep sense of helplessness. "I'm looking forward to meeting him," Qi Yu said longingly. "I won't let you succeed. Don't even think of using me as a bargaining chip to threaten my father. That's not up to you. Let's go." The Empyrean fairy couldn't help but glance at Tang Zheng. That ball of flames was so dazzling that it was impossible to see what was going on inside. "There's no need to look. He's dead for sure. Once this fire burns out, it'll be the moment when his life ends," Qi Yu said. The Empyrean fairy bit her lips, causing them to turn purple. She wanted to retort Qi Yu, but she found that there was no way to do so. "There's nothing much to see in this fire. Let's go," Qi Yu shouted as he turned around and left. The Empyrean fairy, trapped by the sword Qi, followed him step by step. She looked back 3 times with every step. She wanted to see a miracle happen and see Tang Zheng walk out of the flames. But in the end, she was disappointed. The fire was too strong and seemed capable of burning everything. No one walked out of it. Qi Yu kidnapped the Empyrean fairy and left the peak of Sky Mountain. Only the raging flames were left. The wind blew, causing the flames to burn even higher and more vigorously. The Thundercloud Beast and the Scarlet Moon Beast finally crawled up. They turned their gazes from the direction where Qi Yu disappeared to. Their eyes were filled with despair. The 2 strange beasts limped to the front of the flames. They looked at each other, not knowing what to do. They couldn't save anyone. They could only wait at the side for the flames to burn out. This was simply torture. In the depths of the flames, the 2 people overlapped each other. They were surrounded by layers of flames and couldn't be seen from the outside. Even their voices were completely blocked out by the flames. Li Xiaotian's voice was gentle and moving. It was full of temptation. After the intense tearing pain, her heart was filled with joy. She had protected her chastity for more than 20 years, but at this moment, she had completely given it to Tang Zheng. She was completely willing. She was even filled with joy. Feng Shishir and the others wanted to stop her, but in the end, they didn't succeed. She got what she wanted. From now on, she was his woman. Just like any other woman, she could openly stay by his side. This would be the happiest and most fulfilling thing. Looking at the face so close to him, his eyes were a little dazed. He couldn't focus his gaze. This was the after effect of using the pure yang energy. Li Xiaotian knew that he didn't know what happened at this moment and what it meant to her. However, she believed that once he knew, he would take responsibility. Of course, Li Xiaotian's original intention was to save him. She didn't have any complicated thoughts. Tang Zheng instinctively hugged Li Xiaotian tightly. The pure yin energy flowed into his body continuously. He absorbed it hungrily. His skin had turned fiery red, like burning charcoal. However, this didn't hurt Li Xiaotian. The pure yin energy in her body naturally resisted the heat and flames. This was the special characteristic of flames. It burned foreign objects, but it didn't hurt people with pure yin energy. In the past, Li Xiaotian couldn't sense the pure yin energy. However, at this moment, she could clearly sense the loss of pure yin energy. It was the first time in her life that she felt pure yin energy. So this is what he dreamed of. She muttered to herself, trying to cater to Tang Zheng's needs. Time passed little by little. The two of them were completely unaware of what was happening outside. They didn't know that the Empyrean fairy had been kidnapped. Tang Zheng's consciousness didn't completely disappear. He just lost control of his body. He knew that he had reached a critical moment of life and death. The power of the Golden Crow's soul is too terrifying. Because of the sky-swallowing technique, it merged into my body. If I can't digest this energy and harmonize the pure yang energy, I will definitely die. The energy of the Golden Crow's soul rampaged through his body, tearing his meridians bit by bit. Pa! One of his meridians broke. Finally, it shattered into pieces. The energy was like a flood that broke through a dam. Without the restraint of his meridians, it directly rushed into his muscles and bones. This time, the unimaginable pain stimulated his nerves, torturing his body and mind. He couldn't help but scream. Papa! Another meridian was completely broken. An even more violent energy rushed into his muscles and bones. An even more intense pain almost engulfed him. This time, his scream came to an abrupt end. He didn't have the strength to scream anymore. Without meridians, my true chi won't have a path to travel. Won't I be destroyed? Even if I survive, what's the use? He thought in despair. Meridians were an essential part of the human body. It was also the path for a cultivator's true chi to travel. Without a path, true chi wouldn't be able to travel anywhere else. How could one use magic or use magic treasures? Tang Zheng was very clear on this point. Therefore, when he saw his meridians break, his heart fell to the bottom. This situation didn't stop. Instead, it became worse and worse. When the 8th crack sounded, his 8 main meridians were completely destroyed. An ordinary person only had 8 main meridians. When all 8 main meridians broke, their life would come to an end. Even if they survived, they would be like a walking corpse. Tang Zheng was a celestial with the 9 yang saint body. The biggest difference between him and an ordinary person was that he had 9 main meridians. When he saw all 8 main meridians break, he placed his hopes on the last main meridian. Don't break, please don't break. He silently prayed. However, he understood that there weren't many miracles in this world. With the other 8 main meridians broken, how long could this 9th meridian last? Suddenly, a cool wave of purine energy entered his body from the outside. Tang Zheng was startled. He immediately realized that this was purine energy entering his body. Where did this purine energy come from? He was unable to control his body, so he was unable to sense what was happening in the outside world. He didn't know that it was Li Xiaotian who had saved him, but he knew that someone had definitely saved him. Who was it? The Empyrean fairy? Tang Jing knew what this meant. It was a huge sacrifice, especially for a girl. It wasn't something an ordinary person could make such a decision. He remembered the Empyrean fairy's kiss. But he immediately thought of Li Xiaotian. She also had a large amount of purine energy in her body, so he couldn't exclude her. Furthermore, she had given him a kiss without hesitation. That boldness had left a deep impression on him. No matter who it was in order to save me, they all made a huge sacrifice. Whether or not I can pass this crisis, I will remember it for the rest of my life. He silently made up his mind. The purine energy was like a timely rain, suppressing the pure yang energy. Even the energy of the Golden Crow's soul had calmed down a little. It didn't break through the 9th main meridian. The only main meridian allowed Tang Zheng to operate his skills and control his true chi, trying to suppress the energy of the Golden Crow's soul. However, good things didn't last long. Before he could cheer, the pure yang energy became restless again. Like a surging wave, it directly swallowed the purine energy. He immediately realized that he was in trouble. This purine energy isn't enough. There's no way to reconcile so much pure yang energy. He almost despaired. If the purine energy wasn't enough, it meant that all his efforts were in vain. As expected, the pure yang energy was stirring up trouble again. The energy of the Golden Crow's soul also became violent. It kept colliding in the 9th main meridian, as if it was dealing with the other 8 main meridian, completely destroying it. The 9th main meridian was struggling to hold on. It was on the verge of collapse, as if it could be torn apart at any time. The purine energy was still merging into his body. He knew that he still needed more purine energy. Thus, his body instinctively reacted, and the range of his movements became bigger and bigger. Li Xiaotian's comfortable moans were no longer gentle. They even sounded high-pitched, mixed with a trace of pain. She couldn't help but frown. But she still gritted her teeth and persevered. With great difficulty, she catered to Tang Zheng and transferred more purine energy to her. Chapter 1348. The purine energy in Li Xiaotian's body was being emptied little by little. Purine energy was a vital part of a woman's life. Once a large amount of it was lost, it could endanger her life. Yi Dingdang was a good example. If she did not have the purine energy in the gate of heaven to replenish her, she would not be able to recover. How could the intelligent Li Xiaotian not know this? But she still did not reject Tang Zheng's request. Li Xiaotian's complexion became worse and worse. Her face gradually became pale, especially under the light of the fire. She looked even more haggard. Tang Zheng did not notice this at all. His mind was completely immersed in his body. The 8 main meridians were completely destroyed, and the 9th was in danger. At the crucial moment, the vast and mighty purine energy rushed into his body like a flood, immediately suppressing the pure yang energy. The 9th main meridian slowly stabilized and flashed with a golden light. It was like a golden dragon, swimming around. Yes, his body was like a sea, and this golden dragon-like 9th main meridian was swimming around in the sea. This. Tang Zheng was dumbstruck. From the 9th main meridian, he felt a surge of dragon energy. Realization dawned upon him as he recalled that the dragon vein in Qin Shi Huang's mausoleum had merged with his 9th main meridian. After that, he had merged with so many dragon souls, and the dragon qi in his 9th main meridian had become stronger and stronger. This time, it was completely revealed, which was especially terrifying. However, the 9th main meridian was actually out of its fixed position. This kind of situation was unheard of. Although the 9th main meridian was swimming around unsteadily, it was still connected to Tang Zheng's mind. He could clearly feel that the true energy in it was getting stronger and stronger. The energy of the Golden Crow's soul was completely dispersed in his body. His body became a vast sea, and the 9th main meridian was swimming in it. Although the pure yang energy suppressed the signs, it still set off bursts of flames in his body. The purine energy was like a fire extinguisher, trying to extinguish these flames. Tang Zheng's consciousness became clearer little by little. He watched as the 9th main meridian continuously absorbed the energy of the Golden Crow's soul, and his true energy rose steadily. Boom! A muffled thunder-like sound rang out as his zhenqi rose to a new height, directly rushing to the limit of his meridians. He had directly soared into the sky and reached the peak of the divine transformation realm. His meridians were completely filled with true energy, and once his true energy underwent a qualitative change, he would be able to cross the threshold from the deity transformation stage to the grand ascension stage. His true qi was indeed changing bit by bit. The total amount did not increase, but as his meridians flowed, he absorbed the soul of the Golden Crow from all over the place. The quality of his true qi was quietly changing. Could it really be possible to break through to the grand ascension stage in one fell swoop? Tang Zheng was extremely excited. Before his zhenqi could undergo a qualitative change, the pure yang energy had already gradually calmed down. The pure yin energy was already very weak, as if it could disappear at any time. All of a sudden, his eyes regained consciousness and flashed with the light of wisdom. What entered his eyes was a haggard yet beautiful face. He was shocked and stared straight at the other party. He was hugging her tightly. Her eyes were blurred, as if she could close her eyes at any moment. Their surroundings were still enveloped in flames, but the flames were clearly much weaker. Li Xiaotian. Tang Zheng turned pale with fright. A hint of joy appeared in Li Xiaotian's eyes. He squeezed out a smile with difficulty and stammered, "You're finally recovered. You gave me your purine energy?" How could Tang Zheng not understand what had happened? The two met each other with sincerity, their bodies naked, and their skin intimately touching. He had previously speculated that it was either the Empyrean fairy or Li Xiaotian who was replenishing her pure yin energy. Now it seemed that Li Xiaotian had saved him at a critical moment. "Don't worry, I'll save you," Tang Zheng comforted. "I know I can't be saved. Now that I've finally become your woman, I'm very happy. Goodbye." Li Xiaotian seemed to have used up all of his strength to say this, and his breathing became very weak. Tang Zheng's heart was filled with all kinds of emotions. Li Xiaotian's thoughts couldn't be more obvious. She was different from other girls. Although she had always suppressed her feelings and didn't tell Tang Zheng. However, this time she used her actions to express her feelings, but the price she paid was everyone's lives. Tang Zheng's eyes couldn't help but turn red. He kept shaking his head and anxiously said, "No, don't say anything. I'll save you right away." He quickly took out the 9 transformations soul return pill and tried to feed it to her. "Farewell." Li Xiaotian's weak words came out of her mouth. Her voice was like a mosquito, but it was like thunder exploding in Tang Zheng's mind. He was suddenly startled and stared straight at her. Her head drooped down and her eyes lost all signs of life. She slowly closed her eyes and stopped breathing. Tang Zheng lost the ability to speak. He just stared at her. The 9 transformations soul return pill in his hand looked like he had lost his soul. "Ah!" Tang Zheng looked up to the sky and howled, hugging her tightly. The howl disappeared, but no sound came out of his mouth. A tear fell. He was crying silently. Scenes of his acquaintance with Li Xiaotian flashed through his mind like a movie. When he met her on the train, she was cunning and scheming. With just a few words, she almost caused him to die under the sword of the cold-faced killer. After that, she followed him like a dog fart plaster and met her in the prehistoric heavenly tomb. She took away her heaven-shocking bow and shooting sun arrows, causing her to fail at the last moment and fly into a rage. For a long time, Tang Zheng and Li Xiaotian were enemies. They were wary of each other and plotted against each other. However, the affairs of the world changed, making it difficult to understand. Li Xiaotian lost his memories and became a good person. Little by little, he began to fall in love with Tang Zheng. He silently accompanied him by his side, gave him advice, seized the Li Palace, and managed it in an orderly fashion. He had known her for too long, and their grudges were so entangled that they almost killed each other. But now, she was actually willing to sacrifice her life for him. The changes in her heart were moving. The scene disappeared, and his gaze landed on her face again. Her haggard face was so beautiful that it moved one's heart, like a sleeping beauty. The corner of her mouth actually curled up into a smile at the last moment, as if to say that she did not regret it and was very satisfied with this result. Tang Zheng's heart felt as if it had been ruthlessly stabbed by a knife. It was dripping with blood, and his heart ached to the extreme. Hoo-hoo. He panted heavily, as if he didn't have to use all his strength to even breathe. This was an extremely sad situation. "I said I would save you, so I will definitely save you." After a long while, Tang Zheng finally walked out of his dazed state. Gritting his teeth, he squeezed out these words. Although Li Xiaotian was already completely dead, Tang Zheng was not an ordinary person, so he naturally would not give up. He had already secretly vowed in his heart that he would save her. Whether it was a mountain of blades, a sea of flames, or the hell of Avicii, he would charge in without hesitation and save her. He took out a set of clothes and carefully dressed her. Looking at her naked body, he did not have any thoughts of lust, only endless love. A woman who was willing to give up her life for him. If a man was not moved, then he was definitely a cold-blooded animal. Perhaps, even a cold-blooded animal would have his blood heated up and his heart melted when faced with this matter. Tang Zheng was not a cold-blooded animal, and his heart had already melted. In the depths of his heart, Li Xiaotian's figure gradually became clear and settled, occupying a place. The two of them had already put on their clothes. Although the flames were still burning around them, they were suppressed by an invisible force and could not approach the two of them. He carried her and walked out of the flames step by step. Every time he took a step, the flames would automatically split to the sides. The moment he completely walked out of the flames seemed to have lost their fuel and extinguished with a poof. The Thundercloud Beast and Red Moon Beast had been guarding in front of the flames. The two beasts did not know what to do and could only wait. Finally, they saw Tang Zheng walking out, but he was carrying a person in his arms. When the flames extinguished, they hurriedly limped forward. If Qiyu saw this scene, he would definitely be so shocked that his eyeballs would fall to the ground. He was very sure that Tang Zheng would definitely die, so he did not chase into the flames and kill him with his sword. However, the final result completely overturned his judgment. Tang Zheng did not die and was lucky enough to survive. Actually, according to common sense, Qiyu's judgment was correct. The yang energy contained in the 9 golden crow souls was unimaginably strong. When the souls of the golden crow were absorbed into his body, the pure yang energy in his body exploded. Furthermore, the yang energy pushed the pure yang energy to an unprecedented peak state. This was not something that could be reconciled with a little bit of pure yin energy. A person's pure yin energy was not enough to reconcile so much pure yang energy. However, Qiyu never thought that Li Xiaotian would give up his life and give all his pure yin energy to Tang Zheng. Every woman had a certain amount of pure yin energy. Because of their different physiques, the amount of pure yin energy they had was also different. Pure yin energy was a part of maintaining life. A woman must have a certain amount of pure yin energy in her body in order to survive. If the amount of pure yin energy was lower than this limit, something would happen to her body. Just like Yi Ding Dang, she would lose consciousness. There was also a lot of pure yin energy below this limit, but they did not dare to use it easily. Qiyu was very clear about this, so even if he knew that Li Xiaotian used pure yin energy to save Tang Zheng, he was not worried. That was because he never thought that Li Xiaotian would use the amount of pure yin energy below the limit. In the end, he even contributed all of his pure yin energy. This was suicide. Qiyu knew that Li Xiaotian was a smart person and would definitely not do such a suicidal thing. However, no matter how much he thought about it, he still made a mistake. If it was the previous Li Xiaotian, she would not even think about it and would not do such a suicidal thing. But now, Li Xiaotian was no longer the previous her, and the person she wanted to save was Tang Zheng. Therefore, she was willing to give up her life. This was a victory that was exchanged with her life, a life for a life. Chapter 1349. Tang Zheng's eyes were red. He raised his head and saw the thundercloud beast and the scarlet lunar beast. They were looking at him with burning eyes. With a glance, he saw the injuries on their bodies. His heart tightened as he asked, "How are your injuries?" Hearing Tang Zheng speak, the 2 beasts were surprised and happy. They quickly replied, "Our injuries are not serious." Tang Zheng was relieved. He looked around and saw that there was no one else standing on the peak of the heavenly mountain. An aura of death enveloped the peak. Where are the others? He still remembered that when his pure yang energy erupted, the few parties were still fighting. It was impossible that they were all dead. The 2 beasts talked at once. One said a little. The other added a little. Finally, the truth was revealed. Tang Zheng was dumbfounded. He looked at the scattered corpses. Those were the old subordinates of the Yellow Emperor. They had all died under War Soul. When he thought of War Soul, his heart was filled with an indescribable anger. That was one of his most precious treasures. However, because the Sword Soul had fallen into the hands of Qiyu, he was particularly shocked when he heard of Qiyu's terrifying killing methods. With his cultivation and understanding of sword arts, he was completely unable to unleash the power of War Soul. The power that War Soul had released in Qiyu's hands made him pale in comparison. Other than Wuxia, the old subordinates of the Yellow Emperor had all been wiped out. It was truly lamentable. These old enemies from tens of thousands of years ago, because of him, Qiyu had turned defeat into victory. However, this was not the main point of his concern. He asked in a deep voice, "You said that the 4 symbols venerable was injured by Qiyu and was sent flying. The Empyrean fairy was also kidnapped by Qiyu?" The 2 beasts nodded at the same time. Tang Zheng's heart had already sunk to the bottom of the valley. There was no doubt that in order to stop the Yellow Emperor's former subordinates, although they had succeeded in making the soul of the Golden Crow completely disappear and prevented the destruction of this world, the price they had to pay was too painful. However, we heard from Qiyu that he wanted to use the Empyrean fairy to lure the Emperor of Heaven out and take him under his wing, the Thundercloud beast added. What? Tang Zheng was shocked. Qiyu's heart is so big. You actually want to subdue the Emperor of Heaven. He knew a thing or two about the Emperor of Heaven. The Emperor of Heaven was definitely a person who would rather break than bend. How could he submit to Qiyu? Moreover, using the Empyrean fairy to lure him out, if he really did come out, there would probably be another huge battle. Is the Emperor of Heaven a match for Qiyu? He didn't know. The Emperor of Heaven and Yan Qingyi have merged into one and disappeared. Even if Qiyu really wants to lure the snake out of its hole, he might not succeed. Before that, the Empyrean fairy is safe for the time being. Tang Zheng analyzed in his mind. Immediately, he couldn't help but breathe a sigh of relief. The Empyrean fairy's life was temporarily saved. This was a blessing in disguise. I should find Yen Qingyi as soon as possible and discuss a countermeasure with her. Since Qiyu wants to lure the snake out of its hole, he will definitely reveal his whereabouts so that the Emperor of Heaven can find him. This way, we can save the Empyrean fairy. Although the plan was good, what would he do if he really found Qiyu? He didn't have a good plan for the time being. His cultivation had broken through to the 9th level of the divine transformation realm in one fell swoop, and was only one step away from the Mahayana realm. However, when facing Qiyu, he had no hope of winning at all. From the situation described by the two beasts, Qiyu had an overwhelming advantage when facing Wuxia and the Empyrean fairy, the two first-level Mahayana realm experts. From this, it could be seen that Qiyu's cultivation was really too unfathomable. Seeing that he was silent and his expression kept changing, the two beasts looked at him worriedly and were at a loss for what to do. Facing such a predicament, they had no solution at all. Tang Zheng glanced at them and said, "Let's go home." "What about the Empyrean fairy and the 4 symbols venerable?" "I will find them but not now," Tang Zheng said in a deep voice. The impact of this catastrophe was too great. He didn't know what would happen to his family. Qiyu had won an overwhelming victory and was in the limelight for a while. Moreover, his whereabouts were strange. Going to find him directly was tantamount to suicide. In addition, the most important thing was that he had to save Li Xiaotian. This was the most important thing. Since Qiyu thought that he was dead, with Qiyu's temper, he wouldn't bother to deal with his family in the capital. In his mind, those people couldn't even withstand a single blow and weren't worth mentioning. If he directly attacked them, it would be a disgrace to his status. Therefore, by pretending to be dead to the outside world, he could buy more time for himself and his family instead. This was because once Qiyu knew that he was not dead, he would definitely not let him go. He would probably directly kill his way to the capital and take his life. Although the inner demons had been resurrected, judging from Qiyu's performance, he was too strong. It was unknown whether the inner demons could resist him. It was not easy to fake death. He had to guard this secret to the death. Therefore, he looked at the two beasts seriously and said, "Next, I will give you a very important mission." "What mission?" They were shocked. They opened their eyes wide and stared at him like curious babies. "Spread the news of my death." "What? Spread the news of your death?" They cried out in alarm at the same time. The thundercloud beast was dumbfounded and asked, "Aren't you still alive?" "I am not dead, but other people don't know." "Because Qiyu thinks that I am dead," Tang Zheng said meaningfully. The thundercloud beast's eyes were full of stars. The words dead and not dead echoed in its mind. It really couldn't understand the meaning behind Tang Zheng's words. The red moon beast was much smarter. After thinking for a while, it said, "You want people to think that you are dead?" Tang Zheng looked at it approvingly and said, "Yes, since Qiyu thinks that I am, then I will fulfill his wish. Using this opportunity, I have more important things to do." "What things?" Tang Zheng looked down at the person in his arms and said softly, "Revive her." "She is dead?" The red moon beast and the thundercloud beast were shocked. They stared at Li Xiaotian in shock. They thought that she was injured. They never thought that she was dead. "She is already dead. How do you revive her?" The red moon beast felt that it was unbelievable and couldn't help but ask. "There must be a way," Tang Zheng said stubbornly. Speaking of which, Tang Zheng never had anyone revive a dead person. Back then, after Yi Xuanji took the life-continuing pill, his lifespan increased by 10 years. This attracted the attention of the ghost realm. They sent ghost messengers to capture his soul and bring it to the ghost realm for questioning. Yi Xuanji was not dead. He just lost his soul and became a walking corpse. Tang Zheng could go to the ghost realm to find his soul and revive him. But Li Xiaotian was different. She was really dead. Her soul would enter the ghost realm. He wasn't sure if she could be revived successfully. But as long as there was a glimmer of hope, he wouldn't give up. The red moon beast looked at him in disbelief. Based on its knowledge, how could a dead person come back to life? This was beyond its imagination. This was the difference between the sky beyond heaven and this world. The sky beyond heaven was not a mother-child world, so it didn't have its own ghost realm. After a person died, their soul would disappear completely. There was no such thing as a soul entering the ghost realm and being reincarnated. In fact, the Dragon Clan's world was similar to the sky beyond heaven. After a Dragon Clan's death, the dragon soul would not disappear, but it would not enter other worlds. The Great Thousand Worlds were different from each other and had their own characteristics. Your injuries are not serious. You have to go home on your own. I have to go home first and contact the relevant people. Are we not the only ones who know that you are still alive? Yes. Tang Zheng nodded his head. After experiencing the news of his death, Tang Jing realized that if he were to hide the news from his closest family, it would be a very cruel thing to do. So this time, he had to tell his loved ones that he was still alive. This was to prevent them from being too sad. He also believed that they would keep the secret for him. I will only tell a few of them. As for the rest, you will have to go back and tell them that I am dead, Tang Jing said. Understood. We will complete the mission. No one will know that you are still alive from us. The two beasts promised as they clapped their claws. Tang Zheng nodded and shouted, Somersault Cloud! He jumped on the somersault cloud and disguised it. He hid in the somersault cloud and flew toward the capital city. The Red Moon Beast and the Thundercloud Beast were slower. They flew toward the capital city on their own. The somersault cloud was like an ordinary cloud that flew above the capital city. After Tang Zheng landed, he immediately performed an illusion to hide his whereabouts. When he returned to the villa, he saw that it was a mess. It was obvious that there had been a battle. He was shocked. Could it be that the enemy had attacked? What about the others? He walked toward the villa quickly. When he saw that the formation outside the villa was not destroyed, he was relieved. The situation was not too bad. He quietly passed through the formation and walked into the villa. He realized that there were many more witch tribesmen on guard, and they looked like they were on tenterhooks. He did not let the witch clan members discover him. He quietly entered the villa and went to his grandfather's room first. The old man lived in a villa next to his. It was much quieter. He could sense that his grandfather was in the room. There were even witch clan members guarding the door to guard against enemies. Tang Zheng nodded his head in relief. The witch clan elder understood his thoughts and protected his grandfather in all aspects. He did not alert the guards and quietly climbed in through the window. As soon as he stepped on the ground, he used his divine ability and isolated the room from the outside world. It was not that he was worried about the witch clan, but there were too many people and the chances of the news being leaked were too high. Little Zheng, why are you back? Tang Dahai jumped up from his chair and asked in surprise when he saw his grandson who had quietly appeared in the room. Grandfather, did something happen at home? Are you okay? Tang Jing asked. Tang Dahai sighed and said, That's right. Not long after you left, someone came to attack the villa and was blocked by the array formation outside. Fortunately, the people of the Yen clan came, and everyone worked together to drive them away. Tang Zheng frowned and asked, Who is so bold to attack us? They are all a group of ordinary people, so we can't deal with them like how we deal with enemies. In short, it's very troublesome. Luckily, the sons disappeared and they were finally chased away. Ordinary people. You're tuning in to the Xiaofan's Wuxia Tales YouTube channel. Don't forget to subscribe and join us on this journey to catch the most captivating stories.